I had to unplug that mic, so I wanted to check again. I'm on the check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You good? Okay, thanks.
Recording in progress.
Say again? Sure.
Welcome, everybody. We'll call the meeting to order. It is Tuesday, June 6, 2023. We're here in Town Council Chambers for Town Council meeting number 12-23. Tonight with us, we have all our counselors. We have Counselor, almost all our counselors. We have Counselor Fournier.
Here.
Counselor Lawrence.
Here.
Counselor Daniele.
Here.
Counselor Bradley.
Here.
Counselor Egan.
Yes.
And the Chair Pilch is here, and Counselor Pillsbury will be joining us in about a half hour or so. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next order of business is to waive the reading of the minutes of both meeting 10:23 from May 16th and also a special meeting 11:23 from May 23rd, and to accept the minutes as printed.
So moved.
Thank you, Counselor Lawrence.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Egan. Any questions or discussion on the minutes? All in favor of approving both sets of minutes?
Aye.
I
Any ob-
abstain, I was absent from the meetings.
Okay, so that passes 5-0 with one abstention. Okay, next up, we have some announcements. I have 6 announcements for tonight. The new and renewal applications for the Senior Citizens Tax Stabilization Program should be available sometime in August 2023 from the state. No further information is available at this time. Residents can go to the Freeport Assessors page to sign up with their email address and get updates from the assessing department as soon as they're made available by the state. When the new application is available, the assessing office will send a copy by email to everyone who signed up. The town's climate action planning process is underway, and there are many opportunities for residents and businesses to get involved and shape the plan. If you missed the first community workshop for this project in May, you can view the event materials and participate in virtual versions of the workshop activities on our website, which is off of the freeportclimateaction.org website. We invite you to share your ideas, priorities, and concerns with us by taking our survey, visiting the interactive display in the library lobby, or reaching out to Meddy Smith, our new sustainability coordinator, at msmith@freeportmaine.com. Our popular summer reading program for kids and adults begins on June 12th. We have lots of great prizes and challenges in store. Please visit freeportlibrary.com for more information. Election Day is next Tuesday, June 13th. Polls will be open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Freeport High School Gymnasium. This is an RSU 5 budget validation election only. Please be advised that Nathan Nye Street from Main Street, approximately 420 feet westerly, will be closed on June 24th and 25th for the Maine Oyster Festival. That's between Starbucks and Ben and Jerry's. So that street's going to close because the Oyster Festival is going to expand into the street. The town of Freeport will have 2023 commercial shellfish licenses available by lottery for 1 resident commercial adult license and 4 resident commercial student licenses. Applications for the lottery can only be accepted until Thursday, June 15th at 6 p.m. Any other announcements from counselors? Seeing none, we'll move on to our 4th order of business, which is information exchange, which is a time for counselors to exchange information from boards, committees, or other information. Do we have any other information to exchange tonight? Counselor Daniele.
This could have been an announcement or not. I mentioned the START Summit a couple of times. That's going to be June 23rd. That's the Friday evening into June 24th. We've had really good buy-in from the community. There's been about 30 participants who's already signed up. Again, there's a 2,000. This is for those of you who don't know, this is an entrepreneurial competition. So basically you participate, it's free to you. You get lunch, potentially dinner, breakfast, all that kind of stuff. And then you come up with an idea of how to solve an issue, and the winner is going to get $2,000 for their team. So it's a no cost to you, potential to make real money, and it's fun. So again, there's been over 30 participants. I just wanted to let you guys know that that's going very well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Any other, Counselor Bradley?
Since I can't remember whether I said this before, I'll say it again. The Transportation Committee that was created under the downtown visioning process has met and convened a significant number of people in the community interested in it, and they're meeting to discuss the hiring of a consultant to help design a transportation system, or at least identify the issues in creating a system for the town of Freeport.
Any other information exchange items? Seeing none, we are up to our town manager's report.
Okay, so the first two updates I have for you are regarding two things we talked about at the last meeting. We did today finally update the letter of intent with revision. We sent that over for their review, hoping that we can execute that tomorrow for the level 3 chargers for exclusivity for 6 months for them to explore installing them down at the train station. The other thing I mentioned at the last meeting is that GPCOG wanted to apply for a grant that would be used for planning regarding current access points to water in Freeport and the impacts for climate hazard. It's really kind of taking and mapping access points for shellfish harvesters where they're going into the water, and to explore and see if there's a way potentially that we could fit a deep water ramp. It was a grant application. It would require an in-kind match of Charlie Tatra's time. Charlie Tatra was on board with this, so he did write a letter of support for that. We heard about that from Sarah at the last meeting. And then moving on to day-to-day business, this is the last day of cleanup day, so you have 50 minutes to take your load to the transfer station if you have not done so already. This year, we again did a 2-day event on days the transfer station isn't open. Our community really seems to like this event and take advantage of it. I'll be honest, it's a big lift for staff. It's extra hours, it's long days, and we really struggle getting staff to work it. I more just flag that for you just to be aware, as I think, next year as we get closer, it's something we need to really look at and make sure that we can adequately staff. Suzanne, Josh, Peter, Adam, they've all been up there, and I know I'm missing a few if there are part-time people working 2 long days and not so great weather. So a special thanks goes out to them. And next update is on the 4th of July. So last year we didn't have fireworks. Some people did want fireworks to come back. We had a group of people that Peter, Tawny, Whitney from the Chamber, LOB, and a couple other stakeholders tried to meet and find a new alternative location for the fireworks. That has been unsuccessful. So we do not have a location to have fireworks in Freeport this year on the 4th of July. We've looked at a lot of different areas. We need, a good amount of land that can be visible from an easily accessible public location for viewing. There is debris, so we don't want to put it in somewhere super close to a lot of houses because there is cleanup associated. So if anyone has ideas for next year, suggestion, we're happy to look at them, but there will not be fireworks. That being said, LOB did just release their Summer in the Park schedule. They have events going on. And Michelle Barker at Bath Savings has been doing this for years, but again, we'll be organizing the 4th of July parade, which will be held on the 4th at 10 a.m. If people are interested in participating, they can reach out to Michelle. Just call us here. We have her contact information. Do you have a question, Ed?
Yeah, having participated in consideration of the 4th of July issues in some detail in the past, I'm a little curious as to why we aren't having them this year. And I understand that you say that there was a stakeholder group that decided there was no location. Again, I wasn't party to that, but my question is, okay, thank you, stakeholder group, but I think fireworks are really important to this town, and they always have been, and it's a shame if we don't have them. So I guess my question is there still time for a town group made up of a counselor or two and a committee member or two that might be interested to talk to the stakeholder group, listen to what the problems were, and see if there is a solution to that problem that between now and the 4th of July. Is money a problem?
No, finding somebody that's willing to allow us to shoot them off on their land is the problem.
Okay.
To do it to be able to have a site that we can shoot them off from and have them be visible from a location people can get to and go and watch and see them. There was a lot of work that I was involved in looking at different locations. One of the locations was on Lower Main Street at the LO Beam parking lots. They actually did a trial run a couple weeks ago to see if they could launch fireworks there, and then you could see them from in town, but they actually weren't that visible. They looked at a couple other locations in town, but as we kind of got to different parts outside the village a little bit, there were a lot of residences nearby. We used to have them on the school property, but once they put the track and turf in, there was a lot of debris. They've had issues with debris falling on the roof and the sparklers that people have been putting in their surface. So that's why we didn't have them there last year. We couldn't find a site. So it's really just a location we explored, or they explored a lot of different options, and we just couldn't come up with one. And finally, the fireworks company was like, look, you either have a site or you don't. We have other people calling. So I think if somebody could come forward and we could find a company that could shoot them off at this point, I think, people could come together and be interested, and we could probably get the money together. But finding that person that's willing to host them and meet all the requirements for safety is really what it came down to.
So you're not saying it's impossible, you're just saying it's really late, and the current efforts have been full and open and not successful. Is there any objection to just having a conversation about this coming week?
Sure, come on in.
Okay. Any objection on the council if we have that conversation?
It only takes one good idea, pull it off.
Usually what it takes is somebody these sorts of things, is somebody grab it by the horns and pull it over the line. And if you got a committee and they're perfect, can destroy a lot of ideas. Maybe we don't need a perfect place. Maybe we just need a good place. I'm asking, but we'll see. We'll talk.
We need anywhere. We need anywhere.
Just a suggestion, Pine Tree Academy, we did Bean's 100th birthday up there. It was fairly visible. I'm not sure if that's open. It's a big field, not a lot of houses around it. They usually are pretty good working with the community, maybe.
So did you say they actually shot the fireworks off from there?
Yeah, Bean's 100th anniversary, they shot from Pine Tree Academy.
I had suggested that to Beans last week as something we could maybe look into for next year to see if it was an option. So they were going to get information from the fireworks company that they've used in the past. But that's good to know they've done it there before, because I didn't realize that.
Thank you, Daryl. That's a good first step in our conversation.
Progress is being made. Public Works recently installed a rope fence down at the Porter Cemetery on South Street. If you've been by there, it looks really nice. And we want to thank Joyce Fayu. She's actually the one that brought this project idea forward to Public Works, and she got donations to make the project possible. So we wanted to acknowledge Joyce for bringing the idea forward and helping pull together funds to pull that project off. Public Works is going to need to perform some maintenance work on the Burnett Road Bridge. The maintenance work will consist of replacing the wood deck boards. This will require for a day that we close the bridge to public traffic. Tentatively, we plan on the work being done on June 22nd, but some of that is a supply issue, so if the supplies don't come in, we'll have to push it out. As soon as we get notice of when that's going to happen, we will inform the council. We'll post on social media, and we'll post on cable and the town's website to try to get the word out. And of course, we'll continue to talk to Wolf's Neck Farm about it.
Could you put, thanks, sir. Could you put Wolf Neck and Thomas Means membership on your notification list? They have mailing lists, and
Okay, so you want us to mail to those people or ask
yeah, I
them to
think, well, because
circulate?
otherwise somebody's got to figure out from you when you're going to do it. You're up in the air a little bit.
And you could be the contact for the Thomas Means list?
I'll be contact for both of them.
Perfect.
If you'll let me know, I'll let
Sure.
them know.
Okay, great. See if
Can we-
Earl's here. All right, we'll make sure Earl gets that notice to them. And then we've had some ongoing issues at the Hunter Road Fields in the restroom. There's been some issues going on for a while, and they got kind of elevated today as we had an overflow in the restroom there over the weekend. So upon some investigation from our staff, we're having to order some work be done. So there's 2 septic tanks out there. We had one of them pumped today. Only one of them was done in the fall. So both tanks have been pumped within a timely fashion. There seems like there might be an issue with the float on the pumps. So we have a line for somebody to go out there and look at that tomorrow. And if some repairs work is required, we will do that. We have to fix a water heater. And if the pumping of the tanks didn't resolve a toilet flushing issue, we'll have to get a pump installed for toilet flushing. This is not fascinating work in the day of a life of a town manager. I more tell you because we spent all the money and we had to overspend. So the bathrooms will be open. They will be operational. There's one stall that still isn't functioning. We're hoping that by tomorrow, after the company comes out and looks at the float on the pump, we'll know the condition of that. So we hope we'll get those fully back up and running. Just wanted to give you an update because we did overspend that line to get the facility back up and running and operational. And then lastly, tonight, I want to take a few minutes to acknowledge the passing of a staff member. Gail Moody in the finance department passed away over Memorial Day weekend. She had been working with the town of Freeport for about 8 years. She started here as a counter clerk and was most recently promoted to accounting assistant. So Gail was pretty quiet when she took on her new role. She kind of took a step back from the counter, but if you have come in to pay anything over the past 8 years, pay your dog registration, register your vehicle, you probably worked with Gail. At work, Gail was super fast. She could process a car registration faster than anyone else, and I think if there was a competition, she would win. There was never a line when Gail was at that counter. She was just known for being speedy. I'll always remember her as a team player. Whenever we needed something down our end of the building, we could ask her. She has scanned more documents than any one person would like, and she never complained. She was always willing to help. And when we think of Gail personally, she loved her Jeep. She had the Jeep out in that parking lot every day. I'm sure you saw it out there. She loved animals. She loved her animals, in particular the dog, and she loved everyone in this room's animals. When they came in, she would be out there, the first one to see them. She was a proud mother of 1 and 2 grandchildren that she left behind. This loss was hard for our staff. We are a close-knit family. We're a small group. Some days we love each other. Some days we drive each other crazy. That's how it works. We greatly miss her, and when the public's come in and ask for her, they have been nothing but patient and understanding with our staff. So just thank you to everybody who's come in and asked about Gail, because it's such a loss for us, and the community's been so supportive. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Caroline. Are there any questions for the town manager? Councilor Egan?
Is there some kind of a card or letter or something that the town's going to send to the family, or?
Yeah, the
like
staff.
Participate in that in some?
The staff is doing something, their own collection to send to the family. Her family did start a GoFundMe page. If you go to GoFundMe and search up Gail Moody, there is an online donation platform if people want to do that.
Other questions, comments? Okay. So we'll move on to public comment period. So the way this works is we have a session at the beginning of every meeting of ours where we invite the public to come up and talk about anything they want to talk about, except for items that are on our agenda. So we have a number of items on the agenda, including our budgets, operating and capital budgets. So short story is, if you're here to talk about the budgets, hold on and wait. If you're not here to talk about the budgets, this is the time to come up. And if you do have something to say, a couple of ground rules, if you please go up to the podium, say who you are, where you're from. We ask that you limit comments to 3 minutes, and that it's not a time to kind of grill the council, but more just a time to offer opinions and thoughts. And if there's anything that we need to follow up on, we'll do that outside of the meeting. So with that, who wants to kick off our public comment session?
I'll just add, the microphone is fine where it is. It looks like it should move towards you, but it's really just the way it's supposed to be.
Hello, my name is Jacob Crone, live in Freeport, over by Merch Road. This is my son, Devin Crone. He won the clamming lottery last year, and so to break it down, he paid for his first half of his clamming license to be able to keep it, and my parents were supposed to be in charge of him getting down here because they said they had it all taken care of. And she, I think in the corner, called his phone, and he was at school on the last day for him to be able to pay it. And he's only had a phone for about a year. He's only 14, and he didn't know how to use his voicemail. So he wasn't able to, he didn't think to call back the number because he sees, you know, an 865 number, it's Freeport, but with everybody's cell phones, he's not going to know that's a Freeport number, especially at his age, you know what I mean? So he ended up not being able to come down here and make the payment in time. So they wanted to, I don't think they wanted to, but by rules, they wanted to take his license away, which very important to him. It's a license that he can keep for his entire life. He can fall back on, he can make a living off of it, he can take care of his kids on it when he's older. And I really don't want to see it lost for something that wasn't his fault, because in reality, it was the adult's fault that he wasn't able to come down and pay it, because it was my negligence for not making sure my information was on his paperwork as his father, and making sure his mother's wasn't on it as well. I think a kid this age should have, you know, not just their cell phone, but somebody's email, my number, so they can say, hey, you know, your son, you guys know how teenagers are. They're not super on track with everything, but it's super important to all of us for him to keep this license. And I'm asking you guys if that's something that we can do. He took off summer camp all year this year because he wanted to clam. He's going to be getting his permit next year. He wanted to save up for his own truck, and that was his way of doing it. And we're just asking if we can please pay what needs to be paid and let him keep his license. And it won't happen again. I think it should be mandatory for anybody at least under 16 to have their parents on the paperwork with them, just for secondary contact for anything that they need. I don't know, a lot of people have kids, and it's my job to make sure I can make life easy as I can for mine. That's why I'm here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. So to summarize what I think the situation is you had a student license last year. He went clamming last year as well?
You got a commercial license.
Commercial license.
So you got a full-blown one you can keep
Okay.
forever, and that's why it's really important, because they don't come up very often. And he was able to win it, and it's,
Got it. But didn't get renewed on time?
yeah, it was-
Okay.
he didn't lose his license, the adults.
Yep. So by rule, Chris isn't allowed to renew the license. And we had this come up a few years ago, 3 years ago, a similar situation. I don't know if you guys remember. I know some of you were around then. And the only way that Chris is allowed to do it is if we vote to basically bend the rules and allow it to happen, which we did 3 years ago. So if you guys are willing to do that again, we can do that again. Council Bradley.
You said a couple of things I asked you to clarify. You said that, did he make a partial payment in time?
Can you go back up to the, just because we
I
want,
thought I only had 3 minutes. I don't speak in front of people very often. I work maintenance.
Doing great. Doing great.
Okay, so what was the question again?
Well, you said something about, there's 2 payments, one to be made at one stage early, and then the final one by the last day in April. And
Yes.
So he made the earlier payment on time?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yeah, we have the,
Okay, the answer is yes. That's
yeah, yes.
Fair enough. Did he do the conservation work that's required under the permit for the first year he held it? 12 points of conservation?
I'm not sure when that was supposed to be coming up.
Ed, I think they've waived the conservation
What?
hour requirement. I think they have worked around the conservation hour requirement.
Who worked around it?
I think coastal waters and shellfish.
Okay. So whether you did it or not, it wasn't required?
My cousin, Todd Donahue, is a clam digger, and I asked him about the conservation because he takes Devin with him, because he's one of the only people I trust to take my son. He's like, but he said that they weren't doing the conservation this year.
Okay.
For some I'm not sure why, but that's the only reason why he wouldn't have done it, because I was going to have him go with him to do it.
How much digging did Devin do last year? Devin, how many days digging did you do?
Like around, like 6 or 7.
6?
Yeah.
He also went to football camp last year, and that was a big part of it, getting back and forth from camp and, family stuff. He doesn't have his own license yet, and I got to find people to bring him. But as the years go on, it's going to be easier for him to go. And he planned on going a lot this year. He's a little older, a little stronger. It takes hard work to be able to dig those flats, but
Do you have any sense of how he knew to pay the first half and not the second half? What happened?
my parents told him that it was due, so he went out digging, and he paid for it himself. And she had wrote down the date, and she thought it was June.
I'm sorry. He wrote down the date on the paper and gave it to me, and I told him I would remind him, but I thought it was June 26th, not May 26th. So it was, I take responsibility for that.
Thanks.
Other questions, comments?
I
Councilor
like the
Warner?
idea of the recommendation, and we have young kids, because I had young kids once, and they did a couple of boneheaded things that, would be a contact to the parents, so that would be a good recommendation to do. But I think, are you looking for a motion at this point to have it approved, to allow them to pay the license? Can we do that now, Mr. Chair?
We can, if there's support for it on the council. I've got a motion to read, if you want me to read it, and then you can make it. How's that?
Sure.
I'll offer it up.
I'd like to make the motion that the,
You want to read this?
okay, I guess if it's in front of me, yeah, I will do that. Okay. I'd like to make a motion, then accession be allowed for Davin Crone to renew the student shellfish license.
So not a student.
It's an adult.
Oh, commercial, okay, so I'll fix that. Commercial shellfish license in the event the deadline was missed, and that the commercial shellfish license be allowed to be applied for renewal, and that the advertising of the position not be put out for lottery.
Second.
Any question, discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion to allow the license to be granted? Any opposed? Any abstaining? So 5-1 with 1 abstention, so the motion carries. So you can come back tomorrow, Chris, to get the license?
I'm going to go.
Yeah, or tonight, she'll take care of it. And
Thank you.
Remember to pay it on time next year?
Thank you. Gonna be there for my kids. I can't do that very much.
Good job, you're good to go. Good job, Dad.
You did good. Thank you. You guys have a good night. If I had enough land, I'd let you guys do my fireworks on here. I don't, I mean, I do, but it'd be hard to kind of see them, I guess, a lot of woods. Maybe the soccer fields on Hunter Road.
I like motions that get us applause. I guess that's sort of our mission in life is to please the people of the town, so I guess we're doing a good job. So we're still in public comment period, so if anybody wants to speak about a non-agenda item, so basically anything but the budget, coming up, tell us who you are.
Andrew, you nailed that. I'll go after you.
Hey, Mr. Arsenault.
He's like the wind.
Question, are they going to discuss the EV charging stations tonight, or is that on another night?
That's part of the budget, so we'll get to that and when we get to the budget, which will be pretty quick, I think.
So it's in the budget, it's not a separate item?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Let me just clarify for Mr. Arsenault. The level 3 EV chargers is not a budget item because there's no dollar amount. We're not spending any money on the level 3 chargers, so that whole discussion we had about a letter of intent and the exclusivity, that's not on the agenda. So this, if you want to talk about that, this is the right time to do it. The level 2 chargers.
Talking about the one down there by the train station?
Yeah. This is the time for that. Sorry.
So that's not on the agenda tonight?
Not on the agenda tonight. Correct.
So where's it going? That's my question. What's going on?
Last meeting, we voted to allow Caroline to sign a letter of intent with a few changes. So they're in the process of making the changes.
So is the changes going to be reviewed before you vote on it, or?
No, I think we dealt with it last time. We said these are the changes we want to see, and as long as the changes are made, we authorize a letter of intent.
Is the public going to see it before she signs it, or? Is it going to be?
After she signed it, we know what's in it. We saw it, and we said.
We don't, though.
I don't know what's in it either. I saw the letter, and we voted to say, these are the 3 changes that we want you to make, and as long as you make those changes, we authorize you to sign it.
I know, but I heard you guys discussing it a couple weeks ago when I was here.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I heard what I didn't, without seeing the changes of the letter of intent somewhere, we don't know what's going on. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, there should be no surprise. It should be what we saw plus the changes.
Stop by and see it again.
Or Caroline offered that you can stop by and see it tomorrow. Councilor Bradley?
Well, I think Andy's raising a fair point. I mean, we did say in substance the changes we wanted, but we didn't see the language that executed those changes, and that's in a letter of intent with something that's exclusive with that much area to control for a long period of time, potentially. I think we should be careful. So is it holding something up?
So that grant application is due the 20th. You took action on the draft letter of intent as presented at the last meeting. You requested that the timing change from 2 years to 6 months, that they have at least one of the spaces that be ADA compliant, that it be clarified that it only applies to the train station lot and any municipal property within 500 feet, and it would be subject to any FOA requirements for freedom of information.
I think that's what we did, Andy.
Okay.
And if the language says that, I don't think we need to bring it back. I personally don't think I need to see it again.
Yeah. So it's down to 6 months from 2 years? So he renews this in 6 months?
The 6-month exclusivity for him to file and get the.
He's got 6 months
going.
instead of 2 years to get it done.
Right.
He's not
So, but what's his lease time? We're giving this guy 4 spaces, or basically 5 spaces,
more than that.
for free.
It wasn't to give them the leases, it was just a letter of intent saying, yes, we intend to do that, and we're not going to let someone else within a 500-foot radius. So it's only a letter of intent. It's not, the lease hasn't been signed or anything like that.
It's just for the
So they can get a
DC
grant.
fast chargers.
Right.
Is it going to come back when they actually do the lease arrangement on those parking spaces?
I would
Yes.
assume.
Because that's when I'd like to see how long it's going to be. Why aren't we getting some money for these parking spaces? Why isn't income producing property? He's going to make money on it. When somebody has a storefront uptown, they have to lease a parking space.
That discussion, I personally think we could have that discussion then, but we
Okay.
have different.
I think we need to have that discussion at some point.
Yes.
We've had it, but we could have it again.
Well, we haven't had it about whether he's going to pay money for those parking spaces or not. You guys might have had a discussion.
I'm
but-
sure he's not, but that's only. 'cause
I think we should have that discussion, though.
Fair enough.
So, thank you. And I'm opposed to it, so.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Sheehan, and I'm a resident here in Freeport, and I'm sort of piggybacking off of the clam issue. I'm here to, I guess, mostly encourage opening a conversation about the transition from a student license to a resident license. My son has had the privilege of having a student license here for the past 3 years. He's not here because he's clamming right now. This falls into low tide tonight. Here is all of his landings. He takes this seriously. He comes from a family who runs a business. He is treating this as a business. He's about to phase out of being able to hold a student license here. I have seen this kid shine with pride at being able to harvest here in Freeport. He has had opportunities to educate some of the public while he's harvesting, and this has allowed him to stay here. He pays rent here. He makes his own living here. He's serious about it, and I would love to just be able to start some sort of a conversation about how that license could transition into a permanent resident license. And I don't know if this is the place for it, but I think if that were the case, or if it ever could move to something like that, I think they ought to have to prove their landings. And he has. So it's a big deal. It's given him a lot of pride. I think without pride, what does anyone have? We want our kids to stick around. We want them to thrive. We want them to grow and live on their own. He's doing it, and I'm proud of him. And I'm sorry he's not here, but he'll come to the next meeting, or he'll come to a Clam Commission meeting, because we're pretty passionate about this. We've been involved in fisheries for the past 25 years and working waterfront issues, and I'm happy to be part of any motion that might move this forward.
Hi, these are really tough licenses to get and to hold, as we found out. But I think the place maybe to start is with the Shellfish Commission, and go in and get them to work through, if they're willing, a change to the ordinance that allows what you're talking about to happen. As opposed to starting up here, which we would then send to somewhere else before it came back here.
Yeah. It was a nice recommendation for me to start here, so that's where I'm starting. And I do realize it's a tough nut to crack. We've lived in other places where student licenses, junior licenses, go right into a resident license. I understand competition. Competition's great, but I also think if you have the privilege of having a license, use it and prove it. And if not, why not just have a PEC license if you want to have a recreational license?
Was your son the one who was here 3 years ago?
Yes.
With a similar kind of an issue?
Yes. Yep.
Looks like he made good use of the license.
Yes, he did, and he continues to. And he double tides today because he's scared to death he's not going to have a license soon. And and he's not. School has been a challenge for him always and forever, and this is something that gives him great pride and pleasure, physical, something year round. So it's a big issue for us.
Councilor Daniele?
How soon is this an issue?
June 30th.
Thank you.
I realize it might not happen that fast, and so does he.
Councilor Fournier?
So is this something maybe we could direct the Shellfish Commission to look at? And I think what worked good when Councilor Bradley suggested with the sewer department, we kind of had a sunset date where it's very specific. So maybe if we could direct them to maybe come back in, I don't know, maybe 3 months or something like that, to maybe with some recommendations that would allow not to go on forever, and whatever. So I don't know. Maybe later on in the meeting, whatever, we could talk and institute something that would allow this process to start.
Does Charlie staff that? And is he back?
He's out for about a week, but I can send him an email to follow up.
Yeah. That makes sense. Is there sort of consensus up here to say, ask the Shellfish Commission to look at it in the next 90 days or so? Yeah.
I agree completely.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Great.
follow up with them. Charlie Tatro, and I don't remember who the current chair is, but I'm
I
sure.
think it's Chad.
Chad Goff.
Is there not a meeting this week because he's off, Charlie's off?
I don't know. I don't know, but give us a call tomorrow and we
Okay.
can figure it out. Or,
Okay.
I'm sure Caroline can hook you up with the right people.
They were scheduled to meet June 8th. I don't know if the status of that will change with Charlie being out of the
Yeah,
office.
yeah. Yeah, we can find out tomorrow for you, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening. I appreciate you all.
Yeah, thanks for the comments. Any other public comments?
All right. My name is Vincent Miliaccio. I've lived in Freeport since 1977, down in the waterfront. And this conversation is mostly just to kind of open up a dialogue on this because I've been asking questions about it for a couple years and it seems to not be going very far. I've gone through Coastal Waters Commission and stuff like that, and it doesn't seem to be really getting any traction. So I figured I'd bring it here tonight before taking another step. So the reason for me being here today is to shed a little light on what I believe is a discrepancy in the fee scheduling. As a resident of Freeport, I pay $96 a year for the right to have a mooring in Freeport Harbor. Now that wait list is possibly about 8 to 10 years, I believe, right now. And then I pay an additional $2.25 per foot for, again, the right to have my boat in the harbor that I live in. Now, I'm not complaining about that fee schedule, not complaining about any of that. I realize that those fees go to, hold on for 1 second. Those fees go to like Harbor Master, they go to paying for like wharfing out, they pay for a lot of stuff. It goes into the regular fund in Freeport, which we need. I mean, a lot of people are here in Freeport because of our waterfront and because of our access to the ocean. It's not just for downtown. So my point is, my current question is that these fees go to the general fund, blah, 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 waterfront. Question right now, hold on, where? So what I discovered when I was searching out just general information was that that the marinas in Freeport, all the boatyards, like Brewers and Strouts, for instance, just as an example, pay a set $22 fee for a slip. And that's just a set fee. Now, I mean, if you believe that the fee for the mooring is for the right to have the mooring, that's one thing. But if you believe the fee is to help pay for harbor master wharfing out and general upkeep of Freeport Harbor, I believe that the boatyards add an additional 350 vessels roughly to the harbor, which doubles our harbor's capacity for vessels. Every one of those boats has yards and yards of toxic bottom paint and gallons and gallons and gallons of bilge water that gets dumped into our harbor every day. And I guess the question that I have is that it seems unfair as a resident of Freeport for my whole life that I have the right to pay $200 for a mooring that I maintain and take care of and, you know, all that, but that the boatyards only pay a set $22 fee for the right to have their boats in the harbor. So I guess that would be my question, that if a boat, say like the large 120-foot vessel that's in our harbor for the duration of the summer, only pays $22 to the town of Freeport, not them themselves, but the boatyard, then why do I, as a resident, pay $200? And I guess that was the question that I had for the town. I mean, in an ideal world, I would love to see the fees dispersed evenly through the boatyard and through the mooring field. And then I would love, which seems probably impossible, but I would love that money to be set aside for the betterment of waterfront, you know, to pay for the harbor master, to pay for wharfing out, to pay for the repairs on the crane that we have to deal with all the time for local fishermen. All these things affect our currents, our tides, our clamming abilities. All these things make a difference. So why aren't we all paying, I guess is the question. Anyone have any questions for me?
Councilor Bradley?
Again, I get why somebody would want to start here, but as you can figure out, we don't usually deal with the substance of these issues in the first instance. We have committees that we rely on to sort through the different issues, and there will be issues, as I'm sure you're aware of, as you work your way through that question. So is there any problem going to coastal waters? Or
I've gone to them twice. It appeared to me that both times that I went, more than half of the people there had boats actually in the marina that I was looking to increase the revenue for. So, I mean, I guess I'm sure they were completely unbiased in their judgments, but I'm assuming it fizzled out for a reason. I was hit with, well, then maybe brewers might charge us more for our parking. Maybe it's going to increase the slip fees to people on the slips. And none of those things to me seemed like a concern in the grand scheme of things to the people on the wharf and the people on the moorings and the residents of Freeport. I mean, I believe that we're leaving maybe $50,000, maybe $100,000 annually on the table and refusing to get it for some unknown reason, and that money could be used. I mean, we've got a lot of people that are clamming, a lot of people that are using our harbor for fisheries, a lot of people that are going out of our harbor for lobstering, and I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if we pollute our river and our harbor, people aren't going to come. No one wants to be here.
who does the $22 go to?
Town of Freeport.
And it's paid by the marinas for each slip, and those, your understanding is the slip owner themselves pay nothing to the town of Freeport?
No, they pay to the marina. You know, for example, the large vessel pays roughly, you know, like that large one that's on the marina pays probably $100,000 to, you know, $200,000 in annual fees to that marina. But the town of Freeport receives a $22 fee for the use of that 120 feet of slip space, which, I mean, whether you agree with the fee structure for moorings or slips, or that seems like a moot point, because to me, if we're paying it on the moorings, why aren't we paying it on the slips?
Councilor Fournier?
Do you happen to know what the per foot rate is? I'm sure it's not $22 a foot, because I know.
They pay no per foot fee. We pay $2.25.
But if you come in with your boat and you want to rent a slip from.
Oh, from those marinas?
Yeah.
Roughly $130 a foot. And the only way to get a slip with them is to agree to do winter storage and winterization and commissioning with them. So winter storage is roughly half of that. So that would be roughly just $60 or $58 a foot. Plus, they are commissioned to do the winterizing, the storing. I know that brewers spent a lot of money on adjusting their waterfront to deal with pressure washing, the toxic bottom paint, which I commend them for. That's great. They capture that stuff, which is great. I don't know if Strauss has done it as of yet, but either way, they're making improvements. But either way, they receive potentially $200 a foot plus when it comes down to it, and we receive $22 flat. That's it. So it was just up for discussion. You know, I wanted to put, you know, a bug in the ear and let the council know that this is happening out there. You guys have a lot of things to take care of. These things are easily missed, and I didn't get anywhere with coastal waters, and that's what brought me here. That's all.
Thanks for bringing it forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We do have just, as a general note, on our list of council items that we wanted to tackle was a review of the town fee schedule for all of our fees. I think it's been probably many years since we've updated either of those fees.
Yep.
So could be part of that initiative.
Yeah.
Councilor Pillsbury.
So as part of that review, I mean, can we have an assessment as to where the fees are directed? I mean, I know it goes to the general fund, but in terms of the offset to what expense? Because I think that will help inform us as to what an appropriate fee is, because if the intent is for this fee to go to pay for these group of services or personnel, like, we need to align that. It's one thing to just arbitrarily look at the fee schedule and say, oh, that looks low, that looks high, but I think that's more of a comprehensive look, and I mean, I think that's something we're going to have to coordinate with Jessica on, but I'd be willing to you know, start there. I mean, I think that would be a valuable exercise for us understanding that piece of our revenue.
It might be worth comparing to nearby towns as well, what are?
I could tell you the local towns. Yarmouth has a flat fee of $200, and Brunswick has a flat fee of $60. So we kind of fall in between.
For slips?
Moorings. I couldn't find anywhere for the slip documentation. It was difficult to find it on ours. I spent hours searching, so it's not readily available and easily accessed by the public. But on that, I'll get out of the way. You guys do your thing.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Come on up. Yeah.
Hi there. I'm Greg Michaud. I live in Freeport and am a member of the Complete Streets Committee. And if you remember, last year we held a workshop of this bike pedestrian vision plan that we have called the Loop. And it would connect to the East Coast Greenway, which goes from Florida all the way to Maine. Well, we have some exciting news to share with you about some developments related to that.
So my name is Liz, and I'm the chair of the Complete Streets Committee. And we want to update council on the progress we've made toward an off-road multi-use path from Cousins River Bridge to downtown. This is going to be the future route of the East Coast Greenway from Key West to Calais. All right, so the biggest news is that Senator King has officially requested that our project be funded by the Senate Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Subcommittee on Appropriations. The net request was for $1,525,000 to cover the following. Construction funding for the Cousins River Bridge multi-use path to the YMCA for $100,000. Design and right-of-way funding for the multi-use path from YMCA to Pine Street for $275,000, and then design construction funding for a multi-use path, including the Concord Brook Trail from Pine Street to Main Street for $1.1 million. So that's good news. Yay. So Connect Freeport is serious about finding funding to help these paths get developed and plan to apply for a land and water conservation grant with a deadline of June 30th, 2024. Andy, Adam, and others have met with Dave Redding, the owner of Good Fire Brewery, and Steve Mills, the owner of Maine Beer. Both are excited about the off-road multi-use path that will become the East Coast Greenway route. Not only are they excited, but they want to get involved in the following ways. They're willing to participate in discussions with property owners about the easements needed for the desired route, and they're willing to work with the business community to assist in private fundraising. Also, we'd like to put in a plug for having a grant writer for the town. A lot of times we forego applying for some of the bigger grants because we don't have our volunteers just don't have the ability to do it. And, you know, we're volunteer run. So hire a grant writer. Yes.
Yep. We had this discussion, I think, during the presentation at our workshop, so it's going to be tough to hire a full-time grant writer.
We'll take a part-time one.
So my question, I think I asked during your workshop, is this something where, you know, if we contracted with specific projects, where I think we would get a bigger bang for the buck? So we would go to an expert that's out there that could write a grant for your project without hiring a full-time person and use that task down there. I think would be money better spent, so hopefully we could get a bigger bang for the buck. Would that be helpful, or?
Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
Take what we can get.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it was the workshop, I don't know if it was called a workshop, but it was at the community center last fall. And there were a number of people that, on different committees, that requested grant support. And we're still in the same boat. We really are not experienced in doing this type of work, and we are talking about millions of dollars of you know, grant potential. And we stand a greater likelihood of, you know, it happening if we can get a little bit more professional help. So.
Yeah, I think that we've had a discussion up here, as was pointed out, and the spirit of it was that if there are opportunities where it makes sense to contract a part-time grant writer for a particular opportunity, that we seemed like we were all in favor of it. So if there's something in particular that you want to bring forward, go for it. It doesn't need to be tonight, but generally, supportive, Councilor Bradley.
We'll take it for the one that we're going to work on for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
So ultimately, we just wanted you to know we're still working on this, making progress.
It's a big part of, and it's probably the most complex part of the loop.
Yeah.
Because it runs all the way through, parallel to Route 1, but through multiple properties between here and Main Street, between Cousins River Bridge and Main Street.
Councilor Bradley.
So, I mean, the issue, as has been stated, has been discussed up here in the context of generally hiring something, as Daryl said, and also parsing it out. The sewer committee faced exactly the same issue you did and put that into the budget this year, and there is some money for a consultant to help the sewer district and the town to work out grant applications that are to the benefit of both. So the precedent's been set. It's just, but it does take the initiative, because the council won't know exactly what the grants are or what your needs are. And so to have some focus on that helps when you get to the budget process.
Great. All right, thank you. Lastly, I just want to put in a plug for just what Complete Streets is responsible for. We do have accountability for parking in the town, streetlights, sidewalks, crosswalks, all of those items. So as visioning sort of comes to light, please make sure and steer folks to us, our committee. There's a lot of ideas that impact, the streets themselves and its impact on pedestrians and cars. So, just keep us in the loop. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to the whole committee for all the work that you guys have been doing. It's fantastic. I can't wait for that trail. Any other public comment? Now's your shot. Yeah, wait till you go up there.
Not yet. Hi, I'm Gary Crone. My comment is about the old Bartow Library. The stairs on that are getting cracked and the mortar joints are real bad. And I've done masonry for years. I actually worked on Daryl's grandmother's house. But anyways, I would like to get the opportunity, maybe, I don't know if you guys have any programs for working on Freeport-owned places. I know back years ago, Dale Olmsted would allow it. He'd let people work, and then, I'm semi-retired, but I still have to pay my taxes. So what I'm looking at is maybe working on that and maybe using it towards taxes or part of it and something like that. And that's what I'm after is, things like that would need masonry work that I could work on. And if anybody rides by, you can see the blocks of coming apart and the mortar joints, and it's going to need some attention. So that's just a comment. You guys, I don't know what you do with it from there, but back when Dale was in, I could work with him, but it's different now, so.
I know there's some work on the Bartle building that needs to be done that Caroline's been talking about.
The windows up on the, higher up, the painting is real bad, and I don't know what to do with those. I mainly would be concerned about the masonry part of it. But that's something that I could handle. And
yeah, we'll see if there's.
Throw that in your basket and.
Throw in the basket and you can follow
maybe
with Caroline.
get back to me.
Yeah, if you want to check up on it. Caroline's our town manager for now, so she'd be a good person to follow up with.
You might talk, I just started bringing it up now, and maybe you guys can hash it out or whatever. And maybe, what would I do, come back and check?
Yeah, we're not the group to decide whether or not it needs.
Oh, no, I'm not saying right now. But.
Yeah, but I know Caroline's been looking at work that needs to be done on the building in general, so that's why I'm pointing in that direction, because she knows what's going to be
I did some
contracted out.
brickwork on it years ago, too, and they added a door in the back, and I did the whole brick around the corner, so, I've got plenty of experience and insurance and all that.
Something we could look at. Jessica and I had talked about a while back. I think some towns have kind of programs in place that you could do work and have it go towards your taxes. So if that's something of interest, that's something we could work together on looking into once we get through the budget.
Not a bad idea.
Okay, so I just check back with, I'll just check back with the people out front in
Yeah.
Yep.
a few weeks, see if anything's happening. All right, thank you.
Thanks for the comments.
Have a good night.
Anybody else for public comment on non-budget items? We're here to talk about budget. Almost. All right. So with that, we'll move on from public comment, and we'll move to our seventh order of business, which is we've got 5 items that need a vote tonight. And then after that, we have no other business and no executive session scheduled. So it's just these 5 items. The first of which is to take action relative to adopting our consent agenda, which tonight has on it a couple of liquor license renewals for the Oyster Bar and Nicholson Inn, setting hours for our election, which is next Tuesday, and a couple of appointments to the Project Review Board, the Cable Advisory Board. I see one of our potential members in the audience, and to appoint some ballot clerks for tonight, for the election, rather. So are there any reasons why we need to consider those separately as opposed to a total consent agenda? If there are none, Councilor Pillsbury, do you want to read our order for the consent agenda?
Absolutely. Be it ordered that the June 6, 2023 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
I'll take Councilor Fournier on the second. Any other questions? All in favor of the consent agenda? And I think that was everybody, 7-0. Next up, we have 2 items that require public hearings for permits. The first one is to consider action relative to a new liquor license for the Harrisseekit Inn, which, as you may have seen in today's paper, has been sold. So we need a public hearing to do this, after which we can choose to grant that liquor license. So with that, Councilor Fournier, do you want to open the public hearing for the liquor license?
Motion to open public hearing?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So we're now in public hearing for a liquor license for the Harrisseekit Inn. Anybody want to speak to that in favor of or against the liquor license for the Harrisseekit Inn? After waiting an appropriate amount of time and seeing no comment, Councilor Fournier?
Motion to close public hearing?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Fournier, you want to keep on going?
Yes, be it ordered that a new liquor license for the Harrisseekit Inn be approved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. Any questions, debates, comments? Councilor Bradley?
Obviously, this is a very significant piece of property in our town, and it's long been operated by a family that we all know well and individuals that we all have learned to respect and to communicate with. And I think it's appropriate just to say that it looks to me, from both the application and the newspaper report, that the group that acquired it is a professional hotel and restaurant management group that manages properties all over New England. They're well respected, and that we should invite them in for a conversation about how they intend to run the Harrisseekit Inn, and if there are any changes or just business as usual, so that, we can let them know how we feel about the place. It's I think, a central location for our downtown and our community, and so that would be my recommendation. But I certainly will vote for the license.
I like that recommendation. Other comments? All in favor of the liquor license?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's everybody. Okay, we have one more in a similar vein, which is for a special amusement permit for the Harrisseekit Inn. So this also requires a public hearing. So Councilor Lawrence, do you want to open the public hearing?
Sure. A motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Daniele. All in favor? Aye. That's everybody. Does anybody want to speak for or against a special amusement permit for the Harrisseekit Inn? This allows them to have music in the same place they sell liquor, basically.
So amusement, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Outdoor music, is it indoor, is it,
Right.
shows, is it?
So, the question is, I'll repeat the question. Yeah. What is a special amusement? What does it cover? Is it indoor music, outdoor music, shows? et cetera. And I think Caroline is looking up an answer for us, or might have an answer off the top of her head.
I will look to the clerk who deals with those on a daily
Okay.
basis.
So anytime that an establishment has a liquor license and they're gonna have any music, be it indoor or outdoor, they would have to have a special amusement permit. The Harrisburg has not, I don't believe, indicated that they would have outdoor music, it's just for inside.
So does, so you're not giving...
Can you go up to the microphone to speak, just so that people at home can hear you as well?
Hi, Janice Flynn, I live in Freeport. So I think seems a little unusual that a property like that would sell to a large hotel development group and chain without anybody, being curious about what they intend to do with the property. I mean, I know it's a private sale, so, but, to the point of amusement, I mean, what can they do on the property? You're just talking about music, but can they do live shows? Can they use the back parking lot for whatever they want? I mean, things change when it's a hotel and when there are things that they want to do in the summer. So I just wondered if it was just music, or will they be able to do anything? Or do they have to come back over and over again and ask permission?
They will renew their special amusement permit once a year. On their application, they listed live musicians, DJs, and magicians. They said describe the detail of the room. They've got the Mary Meeting Room, the Casco Bay Room, and the dining room. So
Okay.
no outdoor activity. And just for an FYI, the Harrisburg Inn has always had a special amusement permit.
Right. I knew that, but while it was previously owned by someone else, so it'll be interesting to see how they move forward with it.
Other questions, comments from the public about special amusement permit? Counselor Lawrence, you want to close the public hearing?
I motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Daniele. All in favor?
Aye.
Counselor Lawrence, back to you.
Be it ordered that the new special amusement permit for the Harrisburg Inn be approved.
Second.
Counselor Daniele, any other comments from the council on this? All in favor of the special amusement permit?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that passes 7-0.
I do have a question.
Yes.
About why, it's not necessarily about just the Harrisburg, but why do we have why is this a special permit versus them being able to do music inside the building? I mean, does Gritty's do they, when they have a band or someone inside the building, they have why?
Fun permit.
Well, I know, but I mean, just because they sell alcohol, why do we have to have a special? I would think a special one would be, and it's just me, something outside or some extraordinary outside of what they would normally be doing, instead of just slinging drinks. Right? I'm just asking the question, and that's something that we need to probably talk about up here.
It does trigger an
Clerk might have,
inspection, too.
Do you have any comments?
I really don't, other than
Okay.
it's state law.
It is
It's
state
in
law.
state statute that any establishment that has a liquor license with live entertainment has to have, or even DJ or like that kind of music has to have a special amusement.
Okay.
I can think of one reason, which would be it separates the alcohol from the activities inside. And if you have a year to look at what they're doing inside in terms of amusement and you think it's excess, then you have a way to limit their inside entertainment opportunities without taking away their entire business by cutting off their liquor license. That's my guess.
And to Caroline's point, it does trigger inspection with codes and fire when there's a special amusement.
So they don't have a special amusement permit, they don't need inspections, but if they have if they have music inside, they need inspections.
The music and liquor.
Music and liquor together.
It does.
Entertainment, not just music, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know of any time we've actually taken, like Ted's point, but at least it gives us a mechanism to address something that there is a problem.
But don't we have that anyway every year with a liquor license when we renew it?
I think it's two separate things, liquor license and, yeah.
I get that.
No, when you
It seems
got
kind
rid
of.
of the vitulers,
Huh?
you got rid of the vitulers, so this really does provide an opportunity for cases where people are inside gathering in
Listen,
quantities.
but
and-
okay, so it triggers an inspection, is that just because they don't have? It seems kind of redundant to me, is what I'm saying, and it seems like an expense, but maybe we don't need to talk about this now, it's something else to talk about.
I
at a
could
later
see
date.
it.
But
coming into play a lot in, places that have like a big club scene at night where they're not falling into different categories and they have beer and music,
Yeah,
and
just-
wanting to go in and inspect.
So if I wanted to open a venue like a theater and did not have any alcohol, I don't have to have a special amusement. But then as soon as I wanted to serve alcohol, I'd have to, because it's alcohol? Okay.
That's what the state says. All right, we are up to, I think, the highlight of the evening, item 112-23, regarding our capital operating and TIF budgets. I just have an administrative question. It says that we're tabling this, but we're not. We're having a public hearing tonight. We
Yeah, but-
don't intend to take action until the 20th.
But you're not taking action till the 20th, so you're just tabling action. You've
Okay.
done it different ways in the past over the years.
Okay.
As long as you note that you're not taking action until the 20th, you can do it that way.
Okay. So just by way of explanation, we're not intending to vote on the budget tonight. That's going to happen at our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, June 20th. What we're doing tonight, though, is basically, we intend to finalize the budget so that everybody's aware of what we're going to be voting on the 20th. So if there are any changes to the budget, this is, would be a good time for us to make them so that the public is aware of them or not sneaking anything in last minute on the 20th. So tonight's the night we scheduled a public hearing. We have 3 different budgets: an operating budget, capital budget, and a TIF budget. We need to approve all 3, which again we'll do on the 20th. But the public comment applies to all 3. So if you have questions on the operating, the capital, or the TIF budgets, now's the time. Jessica, it seems like there's a little bit of new information since last week. So do you want to just give an update on that so the public has all the information that we're going to have before we invite them up to the podium?
Sure. So based off of our last few meetings on the budget, I prepared a memo that should be in your packets to talk about some proposed changes that came as a result of those prior meetings. So before you is a proposal to remove 2 items from the operating budget and fund them with ARPA funds, and that's the $40,000 town council visioning project money, as well as the Marine Conservation Corp labor request to also be funded out of ARPA for $18,000. In addition to that, I'm also suggesting we pull the $25,000 increase for paving out of the budget, but I'm not proposing that we fund it through another source at this time. It's just a straight-out reduction to the budget to go back to last year's value. In addition to that, so just to kind of, I guess, close that loop, this changes the tax rate impact from the initial 17.05 levy increase down to a 15.59% levy increase. So we essentially went from 45 cents on a municipal tax to a 41 cent increase. So like on a $300,000 home, that would be a $12 decrease if these changes move forward. Also in this memo is discussion about ARPA funding. There was questions about where we stood with ARPA funding. So to quickly go through that, out of this budget, it was discussed and deliberated. So I have 4 items before you to propose funding out of ARPA. And again, that's 2 of them are the $40,000 council grant match, the $18,000 for the Marine Conservation Corp labor, as well as a downtown visioning project engineer contractor for $30,000, and funding for the Tri-Town Little League in the amount of $26,750. So that would be a total of $114,750 coming out of ARPA if those go through.
Jessica, just to clarify,
Sure.
the 30,000, I'm sorry, the 26,750 is for dugout improvements at the municipally owned Hunter Road Fields, baseball fields.
Correct.
So it's not an allocation to Tri-Town Little League. They're going to provide all
Okay.
of the labor, and
Sure.
the town's portion here is going to provide the materials, and they're going to construct the dugouts for all of the baseball fields.
Okay. Yep, the way the request came in was from Tri-Town Little League
Right,
for that
just the
funding
general
of,
public,
yep.
I didn't want it to
Makes
seem
sense.
like there's an
It
allocation
was going to
to a
that, yep.
baseball league. It's
Sure.
actually to make capital improvements on a town.
On an
facility.
existing, absolutely. Good clarification.
While we're on clarifications, just because I got some comments after I said something similar last time, but when you talk about the tax levy increase, we're not increasing everybody's tax rate by 17% this year. The total tax rate that people should expect to see is changing from 6.4%, 6.7% is the new amount, or 6.4%?
6.4.
6.4 is the new amount.
6.4.
6.7 was the original.
From
to
6.7, yep.
So the right tax rate went down. So that's the increase that people will see is the 6.4%.
Well, that is what people would see at the existing valuations.
Right.
If everything else stays equal, that is what the increase would be. Nothing else is going to stay equal, so there will be a different change than that. But for what we can control, that is what the impact would be.
And that's largely
For
due-
further clarification.
Yeah.
Right? Clear as mud at this point.
Yeah. And that's largely due to the school budget being relatively small this year at 3% or so. The increase of the school budget is pretty small, I believe.
Yeah, monetarily, we're just over 100,000 more than them. Part of it is from Cumberland County. Yes, short answer to your question,
Okay.
yes.
Councilor Bradley and then Councilor Fournier.
Jessica, is it correct to think that evaluations in this town will increase, so there will be a greater contribution to the taxes from new properties that weren't assessed last year, so that we could expect that rate to go down?
I'm going to try to rephrase what you said to make sure I understand, but if I'm going to try to answer in a form of a question to you. But yes, I believe that we can expect housing values to increase in the town, both for new buildings that are coming in, as well as existing buildings based on the housing market. Does that answer your? Yep. Okay.
Councilor Fournier.
On the 6.40% increase, does that include the schools?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It includes school, county, transit, and the town. Yep.
Councilor Pillsbury.
So removing the $25,000 from paving, is that because we don't anticipate a certain number of projects, or have we controlled cost in another way, or is this just a way to help reduce the tax burden?
I'm going to go with it's a way to help reduce the tax burden. At some point, we are going to have to increase paving. Paving used to be $350,000, about maybe, I'm going to guess maybe 8 years ago, and it remained at $350,000 for maybe 5 years. It only changed 2 to 3 years ago, down to $250,000. And we changed it at the time based on staffing levels that we had and the ability to get the work. Materials were not coming in. With COVID, everything was blown out. So we used it at that time as a measure to help focus the money, existing money, on other ventures that needed to happen without impacting taxes, okay? And so since then, I have, despite how it may look, I have diligently been trying to increase the paving back to where it should be, because material costs have gone up, as well as we're fully staffed. And for reasons here or there, I have yet to leave that in as an increase. Last year, it was pulled, I had 100,000 last year, and it was pulled out and funded out of ARPA. Completely reasonable and legit. It was with the caveat that at some point, the operating budget is going to have to go back up. So this was my attempt to, by putting 25,000 in, it was my attempt to build that budget back up over 4 years, theoretically, to get it back to that starting point and evaluate from there what may need to be increased as well. Just once again, in light of stuff with all the downtown visioning projects, everything else going on, the likelihood of being able to get all of the paving done, I don't want to say it's highly unlikely. I don't want to speak for our public works supervisor, but I feel like it's an okay amount to pull from the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Fournier.
I don't know if I agree, and you've done
I
a great
welcome
job.
your disagreement.
Yeah, you've done a great job bringing this in, Jessica, thank you. But what concerns me is, and you stated it all, costs have gone up, and the more we let roads deteriorate, not only does the cost of paving go up, but the base of the road goes away. We have to bring in gravel.
You're
We have to bring in
reconstructing,
culverts.
yep.
We have to add significantly more than we think, and this has always been one of those big eggs
Yes.
that we struggle with every year.
Yep.
So I guess, is Earl here?
Yes.
Can I put Earl on the spot? So. Well, I guess, Earl, I want to have a honest opinion, because I would rather find money somewhere else that has to be cut to meet our tax burden without roads being more deteriorated. So what impact is this going to have on our infrastructure of our town, number one? And number two, I know we have a plan that was put together a number of years ago where we have roads that have been identified to plan, and will this have a negative effect on that?
It's going to affect us, Mr. Earl. Anytime you push a road off, as you stated, as worn as it gets and you lose the base, you're going to spend more money to fix it. The double edge to that is the cost have went up. Everybody I talked to about paving this year, we're somewhere in the $80 range where we was in the $60 range. So it's gonna affect us both sides. Me and Jessica did have a conversation about this and understanding what the budget was and the improvement or increases in the budget. We were going to try to do this. Do I personally think we'll probably pay for it on the backside? We're going to spend more to fix the same roads if we had the money to do it.
So with that said, for us, if we save this amount now, chances are we're going to be submitting more in the future.
In my opinion, yes, sir.
I don't think that's wise, in my opinion, whatever that's for us, because I think, the roads are one of our more important infrastructures that we try to maintain here, and we've got some challenges. So I would hope that this council could dig in and find some other areas to replace that funding, because I think we're setting a bad precedence moving forward. But that's me personally.
What is that budget now?
250.
250. I remember when it was 425. And that's how far we've dropped down on the budget. And I'm not going to pick on some roads, but if you drove down Flying Point and that area out there, you'll see Pleasant Hill, those roads are coming up quick. And those are big roads. Those are not just little short roads. It's going to take some money to fix them.
Other questions for Jessica? Before we'll have a public hearing, then we're going to come back and have all kinds of discussion up here as well. So.
I would just like to close the loop on the 25,000. So if you were to leave that in, I'd like to thank Min for this. If you would leave that into the budget, you would be adding 1.0115 cents. So it would go from 6.4% to 6.49 as a total tax levy. So just to kind of give you some preliminary numbers of putting that in. Okay?
Thanks.
How do we get it back in?
I think what we'd suggest is after we do the public hearing and we have our discussion, kind of write down all the amendments that you guys want to add or subtract, and then we'll do the amendments one by one, and that'll give Jessica some time to incorporate whatever we vote on tonight to the budget that we vote on the 20th. Other questions before we open it up to the public? All right, so Counselor Daniele, I think, is up in rotation to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Lawrence. All in favor? That's everyone. So, public hearing for the budget. So now, if you're here to speak about the budget and what you love about it and what you don't like about it, this is your time. Come up, tell us who you are, where you're from, and try and limit your comments to 3 minutes if you can. Hi.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stephanie Payne, and I stand before you this evening as a representative of the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation. I appreciate the opportunity to address you all and discuss our proposal to request a grant for $100,000 to support the Freeport High School graduates with large multi-year scholarships for both 2- and 4-year post-secondary experiences and mentorship programs. As we all know, education is the key to unlocking the potential of our youth and shaping the future of our community. Unfortunately, financial barriers often limit students' opportunities to pursue higher education and fulfill their dreams. That's where the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation comes in. The foundation was created in 2021 in response to this need and the lack of substantial scholarship support programs for graduating Freeport High School students. Our foundation was established with the primary goal of providing financial assistance to deserving students who demonstrate academic excellence, leadership potential, a commitment to their community, and significant financial need. We firmly believe that every student with the drive and determination to succeed should have the opportunity to further their education regardless of their financial circumstances. The funding that we are seeking today will help us towards our goal of raising an additional $1 million to allow us to offer substantial multi-year scholarships to a larger group of students from Freeport High School. These scholarships will help cover a portion of their tuition fees and related expenses throughout their entire post-secondary journey. By providing these students with stable financial support, we aim to help alleviate the burden of student loans and empower them to focus their studies and personal growth. However, our commitment extends beyond financial aid. We understand that scholarships alone are not sufficient to ensure success. Therefore, our foundation places a great emphasis on mentorship programs as a vital component of our support system. With the help of experienced community volunteers from various fields, we match each scholarship recipient with a dedicated mentor who provides guidance, advice, and support throughout their academic journey. This mentorship aspect is what sets our foundation apart from the scholarship awards for Freeport High School students. It creates a meaningful connection between students and individuals in our community who can provide valuable insight, networking opportunities, and career guidance. By fostering these relationships, we aim to empower our scholarship recipients to maximize their potential and make meaningful contributions not only to their own lives, but also to the development of our town. Now, I understand that committing $100,000 to Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation is a significant investment for the town. However, I would like to emphasize the long-term benefits of such an investment. By supporting our foundation, the town council would be investing in the future of our community, enabling talented young individuals to reach their full potential and become valuable contributors to society. Furthermore, the success of our scholarship recipients will bring positive attention and recognition to the town of Freeport. It will demonstrate our commitment to education and our dedication to nurturing talented individuals who can make a difference in this world. This will not only enhance the reputation of Freeport, but also attract potential investors, businesses, and opportunities to our town. In conclusion, I urge the Town Council to consider our proposal and grant the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation the requested amount of $100,000. This investment will not only provide financial aid to deserving students, but also ensure their continued success through mentorship programs. Together, we can empower the next generation and create a brighter future for Freeport. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Hi, my name is Fred Palmer, and I'm involved with the Scholarship Foundation also. I want you to know that this year we had 32 applications for scholarships. Our scholarships are $5,000 a year for 4 years for 4 years college students, and $4,000 a year for 2 years for people who are going to another form of education. So we funded about 3% of the applications that were sent to us by awarding 2 scholarships this year from the 32 applications that we had. And with the funds raised, which is we have raised $1 million to date, we feel that we can continue to fund those 2 students every year for 4 years, which means in the pipeline for our program, we will have $40,000 a year or 8 students, 8 times 5. We are interested in trying to expand the program to further address the need. And in order to do that, we are, I'm getting nervous by the clock here, folks. In order to do that, we need to raise another $1 million, and we're requesting $100,000 from you to help us on our way to that second $1 million. It's unbelievable. We have our first student that we funded 3 years ago will be a senior in college. And we're funding 6 students right now. And when you think about the impact that you can have on a student's life, this is really meaningful. And the scholarships are awarded on potential, not just academic excellence, on potential and academic and financial need. And I think this is a way for these students to get an education or pursue a trade that they want to. And I can't think of any other way that would be more important to spend our money for the future.
Thank you both. And thanks for setting up the fund and for all the work. I think it's a great idea. Who's next for public comment? A lot of people in the room. I'm sure a lot of you want to come up and speak. Don't be shy. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Mason Morfitt. I'm from District 3, and I'm here on behalf of my wife, Margaret, who is running the Freeport Can Farmers Market. As I speak, she's at a meeting with the vendors, of whom we have more than twice as many as we had last year, to finalize plans for this Friday's opening of the market. This year it's going to be not across the street here, but at Memorial Park, and the Hilton Garden Inn has generously allowed us to use their parking lots for vendors' trucks and customer cars. As you consider next year's budget, I hope the council will consider the market's request for $1,500 as a high priority item, because one, we initiated the market at the request of the town, which apparently perceived it as contributing to the downtown revitalization. I would note that Yarmouth's Economic Advisory Board gives its farmers market $5,000 a year, believing it provides a positive economic benefit to the community. And this dynamic is confirmed by the fact that Visit Freeport has included the farmers market in its media marketing. Second, we operate with a bare bones budget of approximately $6,600 for such direct expenses as marketing, website design, banners, insurance, an intern, cooking demonstrations, etc. Thus, our request for $1,500 from the town represents only about 1/4 of our budget, and we're raising the balance in sponsorship increments of $500 from private sources such as Bath Savings, Maine Beer, and Balsam Realty. I have a copy of the budget here and will submit it to the council. Third, we operate on a volunteer basis. We estimate that we receive about 20 volunteer hours per week for 15 weeks for a total of about 320 hours. If we assume that volunteer labor is worth $30 an hour, Several volunteers make more than 100 an hour in their professional lives. That's a total of 3,600. And in many hours of off-season preparation, arranging the venue, recruiting the vendors, developing marketing, et cetera, the total approaches $4,000, or almost 3 times for what we're asking the town to contribute. Finally, at almost every market last year, at least one person remarked that the market represents what they most like about Freeport, the sense of community where neighbors can meet and share their interest in local events. Presuming that the town would like to encourage that sense of community, as represented in the Downtown Vision Plan, we hope the council will give our request serious considerations. We think it's a great deal for the town of Freeport. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morfitt. Please thank Margaret for us as well. Thank your wife. Thank Margaret for us as well. Do you say you have a budget to pass out to the council? 1,500. Who's next? We've got a lot of people. Come on up.
Don't be shy.
And if anybody else wants to speak, you can feel free to line up behind Suzanne so we can kind of keep the train running a little bit. Good evening.
Good evening. Suzanne Watson is my name. I'm the Executive Director for Meeting House Arts, a local arts agency as designated by the Town Council a little while back. Meeting House Arts has requested a town contribution to support our work in the coming year, and it's an important request because it relates to our ongoing partnership with the town and the council. In the last year alone, Meeting House Arts has hosted the Bates Film Festival at the Nordic Movie Theater, produced a Freeport community production of Our Town, partnered with Freeport Speech to bring multiple national-level speakers to Freeport, helped local artists earn nearly $40,000 in gallery sales, and hosted regional and national-level art exhibitions, local student art shows. I hosted 36 local and regional musical artists, including free concerts in Memorial Park, brought hundreds of visitors to downtown by way of our gallery and stage. We provided a stage for Freeport Middle School and the Freeport High School students to rehearse and to perform, provided low and free to low-cost space for local organizations to host discussions important to Freeport, including the recently Freeport Conservation Trust, Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. We provided hundreds of hours of free or reduced cost rehearsal and performance space for local organizations, for music theater, and offered visual art workshops for students, adults, and business workshops for artists. We participated in the town revisioning as lead on the arts and cultural goals and recommendations. The survey document with a request for funds that you've received from Meeting House Arts is in your hands, and it clearly lays out what we have achieved to date on behalf of the town of Freeport. It's a remarkable accounting, I would say, and it's just the start. We have now our gallery work and empty storefront windows. I wonder how many of you have seen the art in the windows on Main Street. It looks pretty good. We've organized free concerts in the parks again this year, Memorial Park and Winslow, that will continue through the summer. We're adding value to the Oyster Festival and Visit Freeport's work by bringing Schooner Fair for a Discovery Park concert and presenting a working waterfront exhibition of local artists in the gallery. We've also have an announcement tonight, and that we've just received a match funding from the National Endowment for the Arts. That's a National Endowment for the Arts. It's a kind of a big deal for an arts organization.
It's a big deal for somebody who's 5 years old.
To embark on a year-and-a-half-long project to document Freeport's unique moment in time with the name of the project is Our Town, a community self-portrait. It's an effort in partnership with the Freeport Historical Society. They are a full partner within this, and other Freeport organizations. Some 100 citizens of Greater Freeport will take photos, add their narratives, and it will be showcased in various town locations in 2024. This is a year-and-a-half project, but 2024 is the principal focus with this. It will be showcasing these photographs and narratives, and it will then be housed in the Freeport Historical Society is kind of a time capsule, a 2-week moment in time in photographs that 100 different citizens will have a chance to participate in. The revisioning effort involving the arts and culture aspects are ours to bring to life. We will continue to work closely with the revisioning committee and others to make that happen, and there will be many more examples, many more to come. A statewide U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that the arts and cultural sector contributed $1.6 billion to Maine's economy in 2020, representing a 2.3% of the state's GDP. It's 14,866 jobs, a total compensation of $902 million to the state of Maine. Freeport's art and cultural sector numbers are not part of this information, at least separate from that information, but it's clearly an important economic growth opportunity for our community, as indicated by its inclusion in the town revisioning work. We will continue to apply for grants to secure state and federal funding and local support, as we already have, but we need your support to make our work on behalf of the town of Freeport possible. To sum up, Meeting House Arts is a partner with the town of Freeport. We take that role and that opportunity very seriously. We need your support to continue to preserve the historic building we occupy, to continue to build out the arts and cultural and community vision the town has for its future. We're here to work with you and for you. We're here to bring the arts to all, to the betterment of the town, and to a deeper understanding of our special place in Maine. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Suzanne, how much are you asking for?
$20,000.
And how much did you get in the federal grant, endowment of the arts?
The endowment for the arts grant was $25,000. That's purely project-based.
Okay, it's
And
my
we have to-
understanding that that did not support your overhead. That was for that project, and it probably added costs to your overhead. Is that fair to say?
We have to match that a dollar for a dollar. We have to match that $25,000. It is purely project-specific. We cannot spend it outside of the project itself.
So the good news is you got it, the bad news is you got it.
Good news is it is such an honor to get something like this as a year-and-a-half-old organization. It is phenomenal that to get something like this at this stage of the game. It speaks highly of, I think, the value that is seen by a national organization in what we can do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Councilor Fournier.
And if I remember right, the request was for air conditioning for the 20,000?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the air conditioning is a whole other discussion, and we plan to do that. The air conditioning is clearly an issue. We know that. We're not going to have any performances July and August. The place will be a furnace. So we do know we have 5 different proposals now in to look at the best option, because we don't want to just throw heat pumps in. Heat pumps would be fabulous. We brought you, I think, a proposal months ago. There was around $50,000 from Royal River heat pump. But that's really not the solution when you've got a full-scale ventilation system that's operating almost separately, as well as a heating system. To throw air conditioning in on top of that without looking at the system holistically, that's what we want to bring back to you at a later time.
And the only question I have, and I don't know the answer, and I hope we get it before that proposal comes forward, because that's still an active church.
Yes.
And what I've had people come to me said is the issue of separation of church and state. And I don't know the answer, because on one hand, so hopefully we can find that. So please, I think we both all are going to do some research to get the answer to that.
Well, I would welcome a conversation with each and every one of you, and you in particular. I'd love to have this conversation. It's an interesting point of me from constitutional law as well.
Good. Yeah, down the road. Thank you. I would like to.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Suzanne, quick question for you. I'm looking over the letter that you had submitted to Jessica, or the form, I guess you'd submitted to Jessica. Did we appropriate $25,000 in this current fiscal year for capital improvement
Yes.
already?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, Dan, because I have a letter that went in with this National Endowment for the Arts proposal, and it actually states that we got $25,000 for operational purposes for 2023. So I would argue that we are in the budget from last year, but That's not been officially, I mean, Jessica and I've had a number of conversations. She's been extremely helpful. I've learned a lot about this budget process, and I intend to learn a lot more. It is not a clear-cut way to understand operational budget, capital budget versus ARPA versus TIF versus you name it. I mean, the overlays here and the complexity of this, I don't know how any of you, much less me, get this.
Well, welcome to
But
our
I
world.
thank you for all the work you do.
So, Jesse, you're going to add to that? Okay.
Sorry, I'll clarify that for you. So they were awarded $25,000 in this current FY23 budget that we're in out of the capital program for their operational expenses.
Okay.
The request was to give them $25,000 to fund their operations. So it was operational support for Meeting House Arts out of our capital plan.
And what's the 20,000 that you're asking for? What's the intended use of that new 20,000?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
First of all, I just learned something more.
Me too.
The operational expenses are to keep the building intact.
Operational.
We have regular repairs. We have the whole back of the building now that we've got issues with siding. We've got, heat, ice dam issues that we're trying to resolve. The building upkeep is a huge part of that request. My salary, I mean, I took a substantial reduction in my salary for the work that I'm doing because I want to and I can. But so we're trying to reduce the amount of operational costs on a regular basis. But running an arts and cultural organization, trying to do the things we do to keep all the balls in the air, 20,000 is kind of a small piece of it. That's out of a $223,000 annual budget. 20,000 is small. It's huge for us, though.
Yeah, right. Councilor Bradley?
So did the $25,000 get appropriated and delivered to Meeting House Arts?
Yes. I also look at this as a chance for the town to make a statement to us, to say you're doing the work of the revisioning, you're doing the work of the project of the pavilion and the park. There are many things that we're doing within the revisioning process that is town responsibilities that we're taking on. So I feel like any sort of recognition from the town, much like I think Mason has argued, we're doing work for the town and not being paid for it. So
It's not a question, but one of the issues I have is we have given you a lot of money. We've given you 120 to get started, then you came back for 70. We had 25 last year. That's $205,000? I know,
225, I think.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, that's a lot, and this year is just, we have a lot of other things going on.
Chip, that's a good question, and I'll tell you, we put $500,000 into the building. So you've paid for about half of the capital improvements. That had nothing, that was not our operating money. That was improvements to the restoration of that building. And it is, I think, hugely beneficial in and of itself to the town. But we raise the difference to make that building more viable. And I think as we go forward, again, it's that, and the marriage between the church and the theater is working. I mean, there's a story to be told here in time that I think is really kind of fun, is that we're as a town demonstrating a partnership between a church that was really on the decline and a theater that was looking for a home.
Right, and I applaud that. But with the first 120, we were told that we weren't going to get another request, and then we did. And we keep getting requests. That's my concern, is it's a...
All right, I think we need to move the conversation along, but thank you, yeah. Thank you, Suzanne. Ms. Sullivan, looks like you're up next, I think.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Sullivan. I've lived in Freeport since 1973, and I'm here really speaking on behalf of Freeport Climate Action Now. And I just want to briefly say, for the sake of, and I'm here to support this amazing arts organization that we have. And why would a climate organization have a big interest in supporting an arts organization? Not just because the arts are an important way to communicate what's happening to our planet, but it's also because of the economy of the, that we're trying to switch to, I think, in the town of Freeport. We're switching from an economy that's based solely on a consumer-based economy to an economy, and we need to do that for the sake of the planet. Because if we keep consuming at the rate at which we've been consuming, there's not going to be very much left for our children. So what we're hoping and what we want to support is the kind of economy that supports things other than buying another dress or another pair of shoes. Don't look at my shoes. And that's what this arts organization does. And not only does it support that kind of economy, it supports an incredible sense of community here that we have. And if any of you have been to any of the events lately, it's so exciting to be able to sit in the middle of that theater and say, this is Freeport, and this is what we get, this kind of either a discussion or this kind of music or this kind of art. I mean, our town was just thrilling. So anyway, I just want to stop right now and say I hope you will consider supporting this kind of economy, because this is what we need to transition to in this town to make it a really special place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Webster.
Good evening, councilors. David Webster. I live in Lavers Pond in Freeport, and I'm on the board of Meeting House Arts. And I wanted to just quickly address a question regarding the lease. We have a 6.5 day of the week lease agreement to use the upper level of the building. And as you probably know, lease costs, triple net in the town, are in the area of $20, $25 a square foot. Because we didn't have that, and the church wanted a relationship that would help with the building, we created a relationship in which we took care of the renovations and some of the maintenance. They still assume responsibility for the building itself and major issues, as in lieu of paying $20 to $25 a square foot. But it is a very discreet lease agreement between the leasee and the leaseor. And we fulfill the contractual agreements and arrangements of that lease, and you can certainly have a copy of it if you'd like. So it's a very legal, direct relationship. It's not a nonprofit that's part of a church. If a church owned a building across the street and they leased it to the Gap, that building would be leased by the Gap from the owner, and that's essentially what we have as a relationship. And in terms of the amount of money we put into the building, we didn't know the ceiling was going to be coming down, but we fixed it. If the ceiling had come down, the building would not be used. And I don't think any of us want to see that building closed because the code enforcement officer says you can't use the building. We didn't know we had put in a fire barrier, because the state fire marshal had not told us that we needed to do that at first. So when we told you what we were going to put into the building at first, it was not based on what really happened. Nonetheless, I understand your concerns, and we have come back. The board, as far as I know, I did hear someone say something about we wouldn't come back, but the board never voted to say we would never come back. The board said we wanted to make this building happen because we don't want to lose the building, and the church didn't want to lose the building. They don't anticipate having the building be lost, and they're committed to the building. They're not going to give it up. But nonetheless, it's a clear lease agreement, and we're doing the best we can to maintain a historic building and create a tremendous asset that you all asked us to do, which is to revitalize downtown. And the last thing I want to say, and really the only reason I came up here, was to say we get a monthly report from our executive director, and she tells us what she's done every month. I'd be happy to give you those reports, but you would see how many hours she spends on the issues that Freeport and Meeting House Arts agreed are important for downtown. She's spending a tremendous amount of time on revitalization, art in public places, Memorial Park, Winslow Park now, and all those things are in great investments. And there are also time investments of staff people that otherwise could be used to raise money. So you're getting dollars worth of value. And I really commend Suzanne and our other part-time staff person for all they're doing for us. Thanks. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, I think you're up. I'll ask you to keep an eye on the clock if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly will. I've lived in Freeport as long as one of the previous speakers, Kathleen Sullivan. And I'm here in my capacity as a member tonight of the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board, one of a number of hats that I have an occasion to wear. And the board, on behalf of the town, is pushing, with the help of town staff, to put together a grant application to Efficiency Maine to take advantage of the money that would be available for level 2 chargers. We know that electricity, electric cars, vehicles are the future, and we want to be able to stay in, I understand, in the budget now is $30,000 in the proposed budget that would be used to make the upfront payment for the chargers, and then after that, the rebate would be received from Efficiency Maine. But that's the way the procedure has to work. So we appreciate you having it in the budget. The board is doing what you asked it to do, and we hope that we can get these chargers here and have them being operated for the benefit of the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Well done. I know we have at least one hand up on Zoom. I think it's from John Albright. So, John, if you can hear us, come on over as soon as you get the indication on Zoom that you can do so. John, are you there? We should be able to hear you. Looks like you're still on mute, though. If you are there, John, and you want to unmute. If not, we'll come back to you.
How about that?
There we go. Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. I'll make this really, really quick, which is unusual for me. My name is John Albright, and I want to thank the entire council for the opportunity to share my view, which is I want to support fervently the request from Meeting House Arts for this $20,000 for all of the reasons that have been stated. Cultural richness is important. It's a good investment. Time and again, research has demonstrated that a rich cultural soup can bolster local economies and even improve the mental health and overall well-being of a town's residents. So I'm asking and hoping that you will invest in cultural opportunities for all of Freeport's residents. Let the music and theater and dance and craft fairs and art shows and festivals of all colors and stripes not only continue in Freeport, but grow and grow and grow. Thank you very much.
Wait the sign off. Anybody else? Come on up.
Jeez, I'm so far away.
Take your time. And again, if there's anybody else who wants to line up, feel free to hop in, or if you're on Zoom, feel free to raise your hand and we'll go back and forth.
My name's Amanda Kent, and I'm a Freeport resident. And I, too, wanted to speak briefly on support of Meeting House Arts. As a business owner and resident in town and owner of my own building for my business, I find that what Meeting House Art is doing is supporting the retail, the new retail movements of Freeport, and will continue to support everything that's going on within the city's revitalization, the town's revitalization. It makes a big difference when you have people who are concerned with the cultural heritage and the cultural arts of a town and are willing to document that and continue in the preservation of it. Not only are they preserving the building, but they're also preserving really what the town is all about. And working with the Historical Museum is also a great tie-in together. So as a retail operation and having worked for years for nonprofits and know how hard it is for an organization to work with the town and get the town's support, I think it's really critically important for you to support them financially in even this minor way. In closing, the $20,000 they're asking for is less than 1/6 of 1% of your total budget. 1/6 of 1% of the total budget. That's not very much at all. That's like pennies on the dollar for something that's so important to the entire community, both old and young. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, while I'm waiting, I'll just kind of remind folks, this is the end of we're approaching the end of the public hearing process. So usually what happens is we approach the end of the public hearing process, we end it, and then later on people say, oh, can I just get up and say one more thing? So if you have something to say, please come up and say it now, because this is the time to do that.
Hand up online.
Oh, I do. Thank you, Caroline. Joyce Fayou. Joyce, when you are ready, please share. Did you hit? Yeah, there we go.
How's that?
That's great.
So I think that any council that gets through a budget season deserves an extra night off.
If only.
If only. But I also would like to put a word in personally for the farmers market. That was one of the things that we talked about during the revisioning process with the principal group. And they've made it happen with your direction. And I think we need to continue to make sure that it happens. It supports our local farmers, our local craft people. And I was wondering if there's any ARPA money left that perhaps could be used to fund that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Anybody else? No, anybody else on Zoom? All right, I think we're ready to move on, and I believe Councilor Daniele is making these motions.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we're now closed on the public hearing. Before we make the motion to table the vote of the actual budget, are there any amendments that anybody wants to offer to the budget, up or down? Councilor Bradley.
So I had two things that, it's a million things in the budget that you can comment on, and, if you're going to start doing that, then you don't matter to the process, you're just in the way. But for two things, I think I would like to see if I could get support to adjust the budget. One is that we had, and I commented earlier on the Transportation Committee that has been working to get together a plan for transportation to the downtown, both along Main Street and between and among the assets, and they want to hire a consultant. We had money in the 2023 budget to do that, but because of the time it has taken to get through downtown revisioning, the budget, everything else, the four people who are involved are very active in a number of different areas, everything from, sewer to Chamber of Commerce to FEDC. So they didn't get to the point where they could spend that money. I would like, and I know that money is going to not be spent in 2023. It's $10,000, but they need it in 2024. So I would like to suggest that it would be appropriate, recognizing that the 10 is going back into the reserve, that we appropriate another 10 for that purpose for 2024, which is not currently in the budget. Correct?
There is not $10,000 in 2024 for transportation.
So all I'm really asking for is a bait and switch, a replacement in 2024 of the money that they didn't have time to spend in 2023. That's one. That's easy for me to explain. The other one is harder. And it has to, and I'm not sure if, I'm looking for balance to the budget, and I'm not sure that this comment achieves that, even if it's accepted. But it's a principal point for me, and it has to do with the Mallet Drive proposal. And my understanding of it, and Adam's here to correct my misinterpretations, but I've tried to get into his office, and he's been gracious in giving me time to understand it. But there's a significant budget for Mallet Drive, which includes not only tax revenues, but expected grants. And it's all in the capital budget for 2024. And what I would like to do would be to take out the portion of the Mallet Drive funding that assumes we will get grants to fund it. And the reason is because we might not get those grants. And my concern is that if we put the full amount, including the grant amounts we expect, into the budget, a future council, which I won't be sitting on, will say, oh, we didn't get the grants, but we did approve the $1 million+ $1,000 for Mallet Drive. And I don't support that. I support Mallet Drive if we get the grants. But I don't want to put in a capital budget which includes the assumed amount of grants that we may not get, because I don't want to create a pressure either now or in the future to spend taxpayer money on what is more the, I won't say imaginary, but the aggressive Mallet Drive that includes the boulevard and other pieces of it that are not in the bridge, not in the roadway, not in the right-of-way. Those things are, we should pay for, and I agree. But there are some things about it, and Adam can tell you more. We talked yesterday a little. I was supposed to get in and see him today. I couldn't. But so I could tell you what it is. But there's some grant money for some speculative things that will go on in the future, which I would like removed from the capital budget. And I think it's about $400,000 or $500,000. Adam, if you help me with that, please. I mean, I know Adam doesn't support what I'm saying. Don't get him wrong, but but he can't explain what I'm saying.
Can I touch the mic?
Don't touch the mic.
My name is Adam Bliss. I'm town staff. So there are a few layers to Mallet Drive. The $450,000 that Ed is referring to is for paving of Mallet Drive, which is badly needed, scheduled for 2025. We go for every grant that we can. We stand a great chance to get a grant. In fact, it's penciled in through PACS already, but until I see that money, I do not say, yay, we have the money. I don't do that. I can't do that. So I think as Jessica explained or articulated well previously, that the request is for the full amount, but it's expected to be offset by grant that we receive. And again, we are penciled in to receive that grant, about half. But money is very fluid from federal to DOT to PACS to towns. We don't celebrate until we have that money. So that's the first layer, paving of Mallet Drive, scheduled for 2025. The other layer is within 2024 budget is a boulevard study of $50,000. And you can think of that as a long-range, high-level planning type of study, whereas paving is short-term, tangible asset going into the roadway. In between, another layer, but not until 2025, is this complete street improvement work that takes into account a shared use path, striping, landscaping, but not this full boulevard concept, okay? So 3 layers, short-term, middle-term, long-term. Within 2024 is the short-term paving of Mallet Drive and the long-term of this boulevard type of study. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and the ones I was focused on are the long-term boulevard study, the $50,000, and the paving amount that you feel relatively confident that we are going to get grants for. And my concern, I assume, well, I have no idea how people feel about either, but for the one, if we didn't get those grants, you're not saying we should pay for that paving,
I am saying we should pay for that paving.
whether or not we get the grants.
Yes.
Okay,
It's pretty high up on our paving plan.
Okay, and is it in Earl's plan for paving?
What? Earl's paving plan is largely more just overlay of roads. This is a
It
capital.
doesn't involve this, it involves a different level of
Yeah,
paving for
this is
streets.
capital where we look at the whole road system and gravel depths and so forth.
My position's still the same, that if that money got in there because we think we're going to get grants, then that's how it got in there, and we shouldn't put it in there until we know we're going to get the grants. Is there any harm to the grants by taking it out now? Waiting to see if we get it?
We discussed this earlier, I guess it was winter still, this idea of putting it in the '24 budget or waiting until '25. And the thought process was, we want to have the money appropriated in '24 so that we are ready to sign agreements with the DOT and PACS by 2025, because that's the way the process works, is they want a signed agreement, a 3-party agreement. So we want to be prepared and ahead of that.
Whether we get the grants or not? You want to be ready to do it, and if we get the grants, that's a bonus.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, those would be my 2 points. I'm right or wrong. Thank you for clarifying it.
Sure.
Darrell, did you have a question?
I think Adam kind of answered it, but I guess that figure, and I think what Ed's trying to do is maybe reduce some of the costs. So we got the $450,000 for the paving, which is, with the way prices are going, who knows where it's going to be. So, but let's say if that was adjusted down to $300,000, would that give you what you need to move forward with a possible grant and to sign agreements to get it done? Because that's one, Mallet Drive is a very heavily traveled road, and I think we need to maintain it. And then we may have a better figure once we get closer to 2025 in next year's budget, whether we need to up that or not. That would give us a little bit of wiggle room without completely cutting it. I'm not in favor of eliminating all of that, Ed, but I think maybe a portion of that could come out to help ease on this budget. So I would be interested to see what that possibly might be an area.
To be honest, I'm not fighting for $100,000. It's a principle from my perspective. If the principle isn't acceptable to the council, I'll back down. In other words, if you really think, you really put that money in because you want to do that paving one way or the other, then I accept that. So I appreciate the effort to try to meet me 1/3 halfway, but I'm not looking to go for money here. I'm looking for the principle of not committing us to do something on the assumption we're going to get grants, when in fact we might not, and then we're left with and I think what Adam's done is clarify this. This isn't grant related. This is something we're going to do. We're just hoping we're going to get grants to help us.
Councilor Morris?
We have to pave this road.
Yes.
I mean, this is what needs to be done, and it's going to cost $450,000 or whatever, so.
In today's dollars.
In today's dollars. So that's why it's there, and you want to get ahead of this now, so.
Darrell, I'm a pretty transparent guy, and I wish I could tell you it'd be wise to cut that, but being very honest, I don't feel it's a wise move to cut this down.
If it helps, I retract my idea to cut it down. I didn't understand it quite the way it's being explained right now, but that's my fault, not yours.
I'll justify it in one way and then hopefully get out of your hair. Regarding the grant, if we were at the top of the list, the highest priority, vying of X number of communities vying for a small amount of money, if we were at the top of the list, I would certainly work to trim that number down. But we're at the bottom of that list. We are at the very bottom. And if we don't get the money, we have to wait until 2028, which doesn't seem like a long way away from 25, but from 23, it's 5 years. And that road is going to fall below or into the reconstruction phase. And then the number just goes through the roof.
But Ed, I want to circle back. And the $50,000 that's there for the future planning of Mallard Drive, what would it hurt to put that off for a year? What would that hurt to put that off for a year?
If I could ask maybe counselors, Dan, do you want to take?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I have thoughts on Mallet Drive. From what I remember of the downtown visioning project, they showed some sketches of Mallet Drive, sort of boulevard-like with trees down the middle. That was one of the few things that everybody I talked to got behind. All the little green dots were on that, and that was a kind of feel-good thing for the town. People looked at that and like, wow, that would be neat if we can do that. That would allow us to expand what's now basically a single linear downtown of a few blocks and allow it to expand a little in that direction. I think we're under-investing in Mallet Drive, if you ask me. It's not all going to happen now. It's not going to happen with this paving project, but to change that from a 4-lane connector to the highway road into a pedestrian road, changing the zoning so storefronts are closer to the road with sidewalks, like changing the whole character of that street is a huge opportunity. And I think, when I talked to Russ about it, he agreed that it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't try and capitalize on the momentum from the project. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the entire town and downtown, but for me personally, I think there's a huge opportunity on Mallet Drive. Whether we do the 50,000 now or later, like there are so many things that we are kicking down the road. Last time we were debating about how many projects in the downtown vision do we say we want to start versus postpone to actually get some momentum and action behind what we're trying to do. So I think this is an easy one to say that. Let's start planning so that the next time it comes up for paving, we have a design ready to go rather than say, wait, let's not pave yet because we got to figure out what we want it to look like.
So one of the comments that we're seeing is, I think a lot of requests are coming forward because we don't know how to say no up here. And we don't. I'm being honest, I've had taxpayers criticize me, and I said, well, I'll bring it up and I'll take the criticism. But I can say no, and I'm willing on certain issues. And is this an item that I don't want to eliminate completely, but we go back and we look at the budget, we talked about funding for grants and hiring different grants or whatever. I don't know, is it $50,000? This brings back all the years that I sat in the audience there as fire chief and trying to figure out where to put this money. And we had a very significant hit on the municipal side, initially 17%, and we've lowered that down. And congratulations for getting there. I don't know what next year is going to bring. Mm-hmm. Some of us on the council will be here, some won't. And we cannot fund everything that we've been asked of. There's some tough decisions, so.
Yeah.
That's part of this whole process, which makes it work.
Yeah, let me respond, and we'll go to Ed and then Chip. John brought up a good point. Mallet Drive it's a capital budget expense, so it doesn't impact the operating budget, so it doesn't impact the taxes, but it's still money we would need to replenish. But I say no to a bunch of things. There's a bunch of things that are in the budget that I didn't vote for, I voted against. A street's not a very exciting, sexy thing to vote for or to advocate for, but if we don't do it, no one's going to go out and do a fundraising campaign for a street. It's clearly a town-owned asset. If we don't do it, no one is going to do it. There are other items in the budget that if we don't do, hopefully will still happen, and hopefully others will step up to the plate and help. So those are my thoughts. Let's go hear from Chip and then Ed.
Does this $50,000, will it change what we do in 2025 at all as far as paving? If they come up and say, we need to do, well, we could do this, so it kind of gets us an economy of scale, or we don't have to go back and redo. We paved it, now this $50,000 survey says, oh, you should have done it this way.
If Chip, I think what you're asking is, does this study future-proof?
Not future-proof, but does it lead to, when we pave in 2025 or 2026, whenever that comes around?
More expensive.
Yeah, well, it'll be more expensive, but if we do the study and then we pave, we have something that we can pave to instead of, oh, now we pave it, we get the study, oh, you got to do it this way, now we got to dig up the road, and
It will certainly inform how we design and phase Mallet Drive construction. Going back to the layers scenario, it will inform the sequencing, okay? There's a shared use path element to this. There's the paving element.
So the answer is yes. We need to get the survey done so that we can do Mallet Drive the way we need to do it.
Yeah.
If we decide to do that, okay. And I just want to say, all this stuff is important because everybody wants, not everybody, but there's groups that want to do this. But like you said, we keep saying yes, and we don't have the money, so it makes it very hard to, big decisions for us up here. That's really what it comes down to. It's not that anything is not important, but there are some things I think have a higher priority.
Councilor Bradley?
Yeah, my understanding, Adam, is that the $50,000 is the leading edge to a $50 million investment in a boulevard. And I'll just say, I don't want to spend the $50,000, but I'm never going to spend the $50 million. You know, that boulevard idea that well, it's a big number, whether it's $50 million or $20 million, I don't know. But the design for Mallet Drive Boulevard is for a project that is in the many millions of dollars. It's not on any piece of paper that's in front of us now. It's prospective. So if you're going to do a study for $50,000 to get ready to do a $10 million boulevard, I'm not on board for that. There's so many other priorities in the downtown, including, Bow Street, Main Street, you name it, that we don't even have in front of us yet, that we're going to have in front of us if the downtown visioning is going to be worth anything. Mallet Drive's future $10 million expenditure for a boulevard isn't on my list, personally. So that's another reason why I wouldn't spend the 50. I would kick it down the road until you found out what your other priorities were in the downtown visioning and what they were going to cost and where you thought you were going to get the money for those things before I spent $50,000 on something. I won't be here. I'm one of those guys who you won't have to worry about this time next year. But I wouldn't. I will be in front of you saying, you shouldn't do that kind of money on Mallet Drive when you should be doing something at Bow Street and Main Street, because that's the center of the town. That's where Meeting House Arts is. That's where the Historical Society is. That's where the downtown building is. That's where everything is. Not out on Mallet Drive for the boulevard to bring in people from out of town into our Main Street, which we also have to talk about how we're going to redo if we're going to capture the downtown for ourselves. That's my pitch. I'll shut up. Let's vote on it.
Councilor Fournier?
This is for Jessica, and you know what the CPI cost is this year? Roughly.
What we budgeted for CPI?
No, what, we used to use, there was a New England group that did a projected cost of what the cost would be for us. Is it 7% or
I just want to make sure I'm not confusing what you're asking. So I look at CPI for what to propose for wage increases. Is that what you're looking?
No,
or
I'm looking
talking in
at
general,
what there's
the cost of
Yeah,
goods. I unfortunately don't have that right on me. I can look it up if you want while the
Yeah,
meeting
so-
continues, but
Well, I'm just curious, because I think we'll blow it.
yes, I would
And I
say
don't know
yes.
what the number is, so I'm, my brain's working, that's scary, but,
Yeah.
you know, if the cost of living increase across the board for our region, let's say is 7%.
I want to say it's close to like 6, but yeah, last year, I think it was closer to like 11, so, you know, just as a
Okay, so last year was 11, this
Yeah.
year may be 6. That helps me in perspective to look here, because I'd like to see the 25,000 put back in for paving. I think we're cutting ourselves short, and we're going to spend a lot more money down the road if we don't maintain what we've got. And I'm to the point, if we could, maybe if I knew what that cost of living, and if since we had to take a big hit to get our wages up, which were very important to retain our employees, and I think that's money well spent, I don't see that big cost coming next year. I think we took a big hit this year to bring up pretty much everyone, and thank you for addressing that. And I think if we, as policy, when we move forward, we make sure we address our wages so we don't get hit in the future with a big increase like we did this year, would be a wise move. But so I'm wondering if we, to get to the point, so maybe we can put this to bed next meeting, is if we looked at we're at 6.4 right now, if we went in at, we initially at 6.7, if we went 6.8, Jessica, and I'm just wondering, with the additions of some of the requests we've had, where will we be? And that might help me at the next meeting to approve the budget by adding the paving back in.
So if you were to add just the items that came before you tonight for further push,
Yep.
I'm not quite sure how, I'm sorry, it's not the right way to say it, but the advocates that came before you tonight, if you were to add just those items back in, including the one that's not even on the list, you would be looking at a 6.93% from the 6.4.
And the one of the ones that were brought forward, I think it's a great program, but I think $100,000 that this year to ask for the grant for the scholarships, boy, that's a big ask. I know the fire company, we put out 4 scholarships, and maybe it's time we went to all these individual scholarship groups and got them together, because we put quite a bit of money in each year for our individual scholarships, and maybe we ought to say, here, if we all get together, that might be one way to fund this, but I think that's a huge request, and maybe there's another way to fund that. So I think that would,
I do believe all the scholarships that were previously retained at the town have been transferred over to the school, and in some fashion, I think, might have contributed to that 1 million. I could be wrong on that, but I believe
we
it
had
went
some-
to
yeah.
that foundation that came before you
I
tonight.
know the fire company, we do 4 scholarships.
Yeah, those are separate. for
Lions
sure.
Club does
Yep.
it.
Yeah, there's lots of local little ones.
There's there's a lot.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that could be, but, so at this point, I want to see, do I make a motion, Mr. Chair, to
Well,
add?
I was going to say, we don't have any motions on the floor
Okay.
right now. What I'd suggest is if people want to make motions for individual things, we could, if there's a second, we can discuss and then vote on that one and then move on to anything else. So if anybody wants to kick it off with a motion for any of the stuff that we've heard tonight, or otherwise.
Do we need motions or just head nods for Jessica to change it?
Good point, yeah, we're not actually
Right,
voting on the
like-
budget, so yeah, we just need
Really, you just need
consensus.
to propose, hey,
Sort of
is
like an
everybody
informal
on board?
vote. Yeah.
Informal, yeah.
We're adding it to the
next
budget.
week, yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
We gave Freeport can electrify $40,000. I don't think you've spent it all yet, have you?
It isn't, no checks have been written.
Okay.
Pardon me, one check.
Yeah, okay.
Two.
There are requests that would exceed that amount.
2 have been written.
There are requests that would use up to 40,000.
Okay, I was going to recommend that maybe you could spend some of that for the farmer's market, because it's the same group, right?
It has nothing to do with the farmer's market.
I know it doesn't, but
Bob,
it's...
can you step up to the podium if you're going to speak? Freeport Can has
Sorry,
taken
that's my fault.
taken credit for the farmer's market. So I think-
Freeport Can, the ARPA program is a program that Freeport Can is supporting and came up with. It is a town program that is being administered by the town. That money will be spent for the heat pumps and other things
Yeah,
that will be used for low-income people in town.
That wasn't my question. My question was, could we authorize you to spend some of that for the farmer's market, because Freeport Can was up here and asked for $1,500 for the farmer's market, right?
For the farmer's market that we are holding for, at the request of the town.
I get it.
All right? That is a farmer's market activity. The ARPA program is not. That's a town activity.
Right, but as an ARPA, if
So you're saying you're asking if we would do it. We would take 1,500 out of the ARPA program and allocate it.
well,
to
I'm
the
saying out of,
Yeah.
the check's already written, so it's a moot point, but I was just
Some of it's
saying
been
that,
written,
huh? I just wanted to clarify if we could authorize that, if that was something that we could do, so that you didn't, if you had the money, you could put it towards the farmer's market. I know you don't want to let go of that money, but you did get $40,000, and maybe Freeport Can is not.
They don't host the money, though. Jessica has the money. Somebody comes in, so like, could you authorize $1,500 from that 40,000? Yes, but that would be us saying, we said we would do this, and now we're doing this.
Right.
So yes,
Okay.
to answer your question.
Jake, were you done asking questions, or did you? Sorry.
I did not raise my hand, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Not yet.
Just clarifying.
All right. Matt?
I would just like to say that, just as a general statement, I'm impressed with how fiscally responsible the town is, especially this council, and we deliberate and weigh and evaluate decisions based on what's best for the town with an eye toward the impacts to the taxpayers. But I think we need to step back and see that we are doing very well. The costs of goods and services do go up every year, and that's just an expectation of how we live, right? And it's not because we're just out there mindlessly spending taxpayer money. And I think it's an important point to consider, because the things that are coming in front of us are not one-offs. They're for the betterment of our town as part of our visioning and as part of the mandates we've put out there for the things that we want to do to grow and improve our town. And I think that it's easy to sit there and say, wow, we just keep saying yes, but we're not inundated with requests. We're inundated with, or we're receiving requests that are targeted and for purposes that we've said are important. And I just want to make that blanket statement, because what we're discussing are things that are valuable and will help preserve the town as we know it in the future. And we're doing a great job, and we are mindful of the impact for the taxpayers. And I think that that can sometimes get lost, and it's easy to just say, oh, well, you approved this, you approved that, but we're very careful in our deliberations, and I'm incredibly grateful as a person who sits here and as a taxpayer that this is how we approach it. So I just wanted to put that out there as we continue these deliberations.
Yeah, that's a good point. Can I offer a suggestion to move something forward that I think is relatively non-controversial? On the front page of the memo that Jessica gave us is a list of proposed ARPA funding, and some of these are coming out of the budget, so it would have a negative impact on taxes, and others are just kind of reallocating monies. But there are 4 items listed here: $40,000 for grant matches, $30,000 for engineering, $26,750 for Hunter Road dugouts, and $18,000 for Maine Conservation Corp labor. I haven't heard a lot of us speak out against these, so if everybody's okay with this, I think we'll probably need a formal motion on this next time, because it's ARPA money. But I would ask that, is there a consensus for that $114,750 worth of ARPA money to be put on our agenda next time?
I had got to that. My question was for the funding for the dugouts. Why is that in capital? I think that's a,
It's a fixed asset. We're building something that.
exactly,
that we own, so it's a-
but it's a legitimate, in my opinion.
But why isn't it, or why is it?
Why isn't it
Oh, why
not in
isn't
the
it? Oh.
capital budget that would free up that ARPA money? Because I think that is a legitimate,
Well, we can spend our capital money on it, or we can spend ARPA money on it.
right, and I would like to see, my personal opinion, that not be funded by ARPA, but funded in the capital budget. I think it's important to keep our kids safe and everything else, but.
I guess, do you mind? Why do you care if it goes from one bucket or the other, right? Like the town has these assets, the ARPA dollars have to be spent by a certain amount of time. So putting things into the ARPA to spend that down, and then we can always do other capital improvements through.
You sitting over there and getting grilled is why I probably am doing that. And we were always told that if it had a 5-year life expectancy, we ought to be putting it over to the capital. And certainly the dugouts, I think, will have a 5, 10, 15-year life expectancy. It protects the kids, and that allows a little freedom, if you want, for us. With those funds in ARPA, there may be something there that could be applied to go to something else we've requested. That, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But I think this gives us, a little breathing room, that's all.
Yeah, like you said, 6 of one, half dozen the other. I don't have strong feelings on it. Anybody else have strong feelings on capital versus ARPA for dugouts? John?
Yeah, that was my question a while ago, and I think we've already heard from Jessica and from Adam about the sequence of how it got through, and that's largely where it's sitting right here. I think, and I take responsibility for that because I'm the liaison to the Hunter Roads Committee. If I'd have been more on top of that with Adam, we'd have been able to navigate this through to the capital budget, which is what the original discussion was back in February when the groups came forward. The user group said, we'll pay for all the labor, we'll provide all the labor if you guys buy the materials, which seemed like a great deal. So that's where that came from.
So, and we approved our capital program already, but we haven't approved the capital budget for this year, correct? So we
Correct.
could still.
We could put it in.
So, yeah, can we put this in so that going forward, we have something going towards it? So what, 10 years, we have to rebuild them again? We have a placeholder?
Ed?
I think Darrell's point's well taken. If you can put it in the capital budget, if we still have time, then it frees up some ARPA money, which doesn't have as much restrictions on it as the capital budget. So it gives us some flexibility, which I think is Darrell's point, and I think it's a good one.
Okay, so I'll modify my request then that we have 3 of those 4 items, which I think comes to $88,000 to be paid for out of ARPA money. So are you guys all on board with that? And if so, we can have a motion ready at the next meeting to officially designate that.
I'd like to add 21,500 to that ARPA list if we're going to move the dugouts at Hunter Road Fields. And within that 21,500 would be the Meeting House Arts and the Farmers Market.
That makes sense.
Out of ARPA money.
I would just like to clarify with that, I'm fine with obviously whichever way council wants to go, but the request that physically came in on the forms was for $2,000 for the farmer's market, not $1,500. So I just want you to take that into consideration as you put your request. I don't know if it was a miss.
They changed their mind.
Okay.
In the budget, they said we don't need quite that much. So
Oh,
they adjusted
okay.
it down.
Okay, that's,
Good catch.
just wanted that out there.
So $21,500 for $20,000 for Meeting House Arts, $1,500 for Farmers Market out of ARPA.
Right.
That's your suggestion.
Since we're going to move 26,750 into the capital budget, I think that's easy swap.
You guys supportive of that? Head nod, thumb up.
I'm for that.
Yes. So yes.
Just looking at.
Is that a yes or you have a question, Matt?
I have a question.
You have a question?
So, I think Chip's point is well taken, and it would help me, so actually, for the farmer's market, I agree. I appreciated the layout of cost versus expense, revenue and expense. And it makes sense as an investment toward what we're getting. So this may just be me being new. I just don't understand the trajectory of Meeting House Arts and where they are in their iteration and how much support they're going to need as they grow in the next couple of years. And I think it would help me be a better advocate and supporter of the organization, because I believe what they do is fantastic and it's such a value add for the town. But there's a part of me that says I don't understand their funding stream and what their expenses are and what they're projected to be. And to me, that's a risk. And I would just like to see maybe a multi-year sort of plan as to what the town's going to need to do to support, to continue the efforts that they're doing. And that's my only comment on that.
I think they'd be happy to provide that, Matt. They've offered that in the past.
Other thoughts? The $1,500 for the farmer's market, is that any easier to knock off and get behind?
Don't get me wrong, my comment isn't to dissuade us from supporting Meeting House Arts. I just would like some clarity, because I don't want to sit here, in a year's time and have the same discussion as to, okay, well, Chip can get his list out again next year and we can just keep adding to it. I'd just like to have some clarity as to sort of the path that we're on.
Are you for the farmer's market for now? Yeah. Okay, so I think we've got the farmer's market in. The Meeting House Arts is, I don't know that we have consensus on that one yet. Darrell?
Two things. I'd like to propose that we add the $25,000 back to paving. I think if we don't, we're already behind. I don't think we're doing us justice by that, so I'd like to see that added.
Can we finish? Are we done with Meeting House?
I was going to come back to it, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, no.
No, that's all right. Let's do Meeting House, all right.
I'm getting confused
Yeah.
when we go back, but I agree, I want to talk paving too.
Yep. So I think if I'm reading the room right, there's two kind of no's, one question, a couple of yeses.
My question is.
Meeting House Arts, it says 20,000.
On Meeting House Arts, I would go for half, of the funding mechanism. We've given a lot of money. I'd like to see them continue. I don't know. We've got a lot of requests, and I think we've been very supportive of them in the years past, and I'd like to continue to support them, because I agree 100% they're doing a great job, and I've been to a couple of venues there, and I don't want to say no to it, but I have a hard time with the 20, personally.
John?
Part of the rationale for my suggestion, Darrell, was to take it off the burden of the operating budget and put it into the ARPA, which is one time, which is, it's an opportunity to fund, I think, one of the most vital activities we have on our Main Street with a source of funds that has much more flexibility and does not add to the tax bill. That's the reason. And if that failed, then my second suggestion was going to be to move it into the destination TIF part of the capital budget, which also has substantial reserves and is actually even more aligned with what Meeting House Arts is doing. So either way, I'm trying to support the momentum that I think is building very successfly for an opportunity to get behind an institution that's going to change. It is changing our Main Street, and I think we would be penny wise and pound foolish to not support that.
Matt?
Would those be allowable costs as we've structured the receipt of the ARPA funding?
Yes. My short answer will be yes.
All right. Yeah, Jake?
If we made it matching funds, would that get everybody happy? So if, every time they come to us and say, hey, we raised $5,000, we would say, great, here's our matching fund for $5,000 up to that $20,000. So we know there's substantial community buy-in, and we're basically leveraging our dollars to get twice the amount that we would have. More to you guys, I guess.
My question is, why are we nickel and diming Meeting House Arts? We don't ask any other organization that makes one of these requests, whether it's Freeport Can or anything else, to show their value. Either they have it or they don't. I think they've made a strong case that they have it. Nobody here doubts it. So $20,000 isn't a lot of money. I think the request to see a budget projection is a great request. You know, I mean, for their benefit, for our benefit, for the future. But right now, this isn't going to affect the taxpayer, and it's needed for the operations of an organization that's putting its heart and soul, plus all of its resources behind our downtown, whether it's in Memorial Park, whether it's in the schools, whether it's in our town, whether it's the National Endowment of the Arts. And everybody knows I'm an advocate for this. I get it. So dismiss what I'm saying or reduce its import. But Meeting House Arts is special. It's doing special work. And to treat them like they're, you know, at us all the time requires you to go back historically and see. And we did. I was one of the people who said, we'll never come back. And I agree. And I felt awful when we had to come back. But remember COVID? Because it cut our capital campaign to its knees. We had to come back. So anyway, and everybody knew that at the time, and we made those distinctions, we made those explanations, and you can't go back every time they come up and say, you promised you wouldn't come back. We said we would do what we did, and then we tried to do it, and it didn't work. We came back and said it didn't work. Can you help us again? You said yes, and here they are again. Is either they're worth it or they're not. It's not, and I think they are, and I think most people think they are up here. So the matching request, they'll raise $20,000. If you really need to make them go through the hoops, they'll show you the $20,000 they raised. You know, why put them through it? Who are they less than all the rest? Sorry.
Joe?
I think John's got a good idea. I could go with moving this out of our operating budget and putting it into the comprehensive plan in the, what do you suggest, John?
Destination
TIF. I think
in the capital budget.
When I look at TIFs, that's what TIF's money's for. It's and in my opinion, trying to promote the town, bring expenditures that we really don't foresee coming, and I think that makes sense. I could go with that, and that takes it out of the operating budget. I'd feel more comfortable with that.
Well, it wasn't in the first suggestion was out of the ARPA budget.
I don't want to see, I don't like the ARPA budget.
You don't like ARPA budget.
I like the destination TIF. I think that certainly is appropriate.
Okay.
I think that's appropriate too, but it's an ongoing concern. It's a business. It should be a business. It should be, huh? Oh, please. Okay, it's a service organization, but then so is Cadenza, is it not? I mean, they do the same,
Something like Cadenza.
Well, just because you're not for profit doesn't mean you're not want to bring in money, but anyway.
Jessica?
I just want to point out on the destination TIF for your deliberation that where we currently stand on an available fund balance for the TIF, after what's already in there for FY24 appropriations, we are technically a negative 138,000 in that fund balance. So if you put in another 20, I mean, I say that lightly on one hand because obviously we're going to have more property taxes raised for FY24 to the tune of right around, I'm going to be conservative and say 250,000, but it's going to significantly cut your ability to fund FEDC and any sidewalk work or any other destination TIF projects in the next 5 years. You know what I mean? Like usually you don't usually appropriate more than property taxes being raised, and we've done so, and are projecting so over the next 5 years. So just letting you know that.
And you have a question for Jessica?
Well, yeah, Jess, I mean, this happens every year. You go through the TIF budget and you run behind until
We typically have not run negative on the fund balance. I'm projecting that we'll be negative in the fund balance if everything that's currently in there gets funded. And yes, there is a period where, in theory, FY24 is going to bring in another 250,000, so that puts you to the positive, 70,000, right?
And then
then FY25 expenses are almost 200,000.
Well,
So
if they are.
then you're negative 130,000.
If they are. I mean, in other words, you're projecting a lot of things out in the future to say something negative about adding $20,000 to the TIF budget. There's clearly the money to pay out of the TIF budget. What may happen is you don't have enough money to do the things you want out of the TIF budget in a future year. But that may be not true because you may get more property tax out of it, you may have less expenses, and you don't know that.
Well, there's only two things that we're projecting to pay for out of that TIF. One is FEDC and the other is sidewalks.
Correct.
So we can cut sidewalks, we can cut FEDC if you want to use those to pay for Meeting House Arts.
You're not going to have to cut either one of them if those are the only two things you pay for.
I think, yeah, we know what property taxes are coming in and we know how much we're going to spend. It's, I don't think Jessica's advocating one way or the other. If we're going to do it, if we're going to do Meeting House Arts, I would suggest kind of doing it out of ARPA rather than out of TIF. That's my suggestion.
I take back the fact of what we just learned on that. I can't agree to that, so
Okay. So who's for doing Meeting House Arts out of ARPA?
I will go with that, just to move our process.
All right, so, all right, we got it. Okay, so Meeting House Arts is in under ARPA for $20,000. Daryl, did you want to talk about paving now?
I'd like to see us reinstitute the $25,000 back to paving.
Anybody have thoughts on that? Jake, and then Ned, and then John.
So I'm wondering if 25,000 is enough, and not that I want to make anybody get a heartache or anything, but no, but seriously. And the reason I'm saying that is not, that's great, we might not be able to do it or whatnot, but the additional dollars we put in then go to the general fund, which, or, gets put into a pot, and then we typically move it to reserves, which have been maybe a little bit flat or declining or whatnot. So I think this is going to be an ouch year. I get that. Is that extra little bit that's setting precedent that going forward, we are going to have more paving costs? Is this a bad expectation to be setting?
So
I get that that's not going to be popular, but I'm just saying.
We're just trying to get back to where we were pre-COVID. This is not even, we're down, right? We went from 400 or something like that.
It used to be 400.
400, now we're at 250.
So I'm suggesting instead of just going the 25 that we just took back out, should we make a little more progress towards getting us back there, knowing it's going to be an ouch year?
So are you suggesting adding more or not doing
So-
25? What are you suggesting?
Councilor Foyne, you're suggesting putting the 25 back in. I'm wondering, should we put 50,000 in? So an extra 25 on top of what it would have been, blah, blah, blah,
Got it.
So-
I'm just wanting to make more progress now.
just to put it in perspective, if you were to change it from 25,000 to 50,000, 25,000 adds .0115 cents onto the mill rate. 50,000 is .023 cents. So on a current, sorry, I just got to unselect this box. On a current proposed mill rate for the municipal side of .4663, if you added 50,000, oh, I'm sorry, I had the wrong check mark. On a current .4088 mill rate, to put in 50,000, come on, you would be making that .4318.
So instead of .40.
So instead of .4088, it's .43.
Jake, I like your thinking. I think that we need to get back to where we were. And it used to be 400,000, and yeah, it's an ouch year, but I think I can look people in the eye and say, look, we're trying to increase our paving, and people understand that. They know the cost of everything gone up. So if we can take small increments over the years to get back where the paving program once was many years ago, and then the capital, there's another issue down the road, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Ed and John, you guys had things you wanted to say. Councilor Bradley? No? Councilor Deegan?
Jessica, for like the 14th time, tell me why paving, which is a capital activity, is in an operating budget? I know you've told me
This is just the maintenance of the roads. It's just like an overlay. What's in the capital program is like more for your reconstructions and, yeah, rebuilds.
This is just thin layer blacktop.
This is just a thin layer of blacktop to maintain the road.
All right. And is there a, like, short circuit issue in our budgeting and our auditing process if we were to move all of the paving into the
Capital reserve.
capital, I can't remember the name of the one of the 9 categories.
comprehensive town
Comprehensive, yeah, comprehensive town facilities.
No, you could, at the end of the year, when we when our audit is done, if there's, if there's unspent paving money, you could directly ask that to be transferred over to.
Yeah, the reason I'm pointing that out, I guess, is I'm still, like Matt was saying earlier, I don't want the point to get lost, that we're spending well over $3 million in our capital budget this year that does not have an impact on the tax levy because we have reserved and planned for these activities so well, thanks to our staff, our award-winning staff. So I think that that's a lesson for us, that we're haggling up here about 1,500 here and 25,000 there, and yet we've got a program that runs largely by a robot because we've done so well managing the reserve and how we spend it, and that we are counting on the staff department heads to work within those budget allowances that Jessica lines out for them at the beginning of the budget season. And we go through those activities, and there's no doubt that we're all benefiting from that because the town is not borrowing money to do things like road paving and buying ambulances. We're using a reserve account to do that. Many, many other towns have to bond for that activity. And bonding means interest cost, which goes right to your annual operating budget. So we're way ahead. And I think if we're struggling with how to balance out a very difficult budget increase, maybe we should look at the $50,000 for the paving totally in the capital budget. Take it out of the operating budget altogether.
I like that.
So is that your suggestion? Add 50 to?
Well, that's
capital?
a suggestion, but I'm trying not to make too much smoke come out of Jessica's ears here.
I really view paving as a maintenance item, which would typically not be something that gets put into a capital plan in that capacity. My other concern is just the ability to continue to fund the capital plan, that when I hear more get put in, and the fact that we're putting in more, whether it be between some of these downtown visioning projects, whether it be the addition of the paving, whether it be whatever is brought forth to ask, and we look to the capital plan. What I'm not hearing in addition to those conversations is how we're going to increase our funding of those plans. And what I'm telling you is the balances that are in there now may start to grow some with the rates turning over as they are. Our CDs and stuff are becoming due, so they're turning over at a higher interest rate. It's not going to be enough to sustain a 20-year plan or even a 10-year plan. So until I determine adequate funding mechanisms of the capital reserves, I would be very hesitant to add new capital items in there to be maintained, because the way, I think I said this maybe the last meeting or the meeting prior, the reserves that you have existing right now were built for existing assets and infrastructure that we have in place to maintain them and replace them. And it's great. I actually had a meeting with Jake, and my comment to him was, part of me wants to maybe get a little creative and say we should take maybe next year, if there's an excess of fund balance, maybe we take that and we create a growth capital reserve so that there's money set aside for these visioning projects that come forth, or these other, projects that benefit the town in some capacity, but aren't necessarily directly tied to a town asset or infrastructure. And I guess that's, if I had to make a point to you tonight, my point would be the way I view existing capital dollars is to retain existing capital assets and infrastructure, whether that be through rebuilding them or reconstructing them or replacing them, right? That's kind of how I view that. The vehicles, one comes out, one goes in. It's a cycle of replacement of those initial existing assets and infrastructure. So that would be my point.
I get that, and it's very difficult for me to think, in fact, it's nearly impossible for me to think that I've come up with an idea that you haven't already figured out. Because I've sat here long enough to know that I'm never going to catch up to how much ahead of me you are.
I don't know about that.
Planning this stuff. So my ignorance on that suggestion was because I see pavement, as Darrell made the comment earlier, is lasting at least 5 years.
Right.
So that it fits that category of a capital expenditure, as not an ongoing thing. I understand that historically, paving as a maintenance item has been part of a public works operating budget. I'm just trying to see if we can move some chips around here to.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily opposed in theory to it going in there. I just would like to know that we have a means of funding it. And if it means, we say we're going to take the 250 that's budgeted for FY24 and transfer it into reserve, to fund that and be like the catalyst for that, that's something to consider, and I'd have to, look into how that would actually work. But
We're moving a little over $1 million out of fund balance into reserves this year.
it was 1.9 that we put into reserves based on, and that amount was suggested based on what was currently being requested in the capital reserve. So including those visioning projects and the Mallet Drive work and, the road work
So
there.
I'm reluctant to fix something that's not broken. So the capital budget is obviously not broken, it's working just fine, and we're funding it with efficient use of our capital resources. So I'm very hesitant to fix something. I'm just desperately trying to get to a string here to get at that 6-point-something increase.
So you still want to propose putting that in capital?
I would still like to.
Okay, 25 or 50?
50.
50, okay. So, well, we've got proposals, Jessica was proposing removing 25,000, we're proposing putting 25,000 back in or 50,000 back in to either capital or operating.
Capital budget's my pet peeve, and I'm comfortable. We got a $1.4 million ladder truck coming down the road here shortly. Ambulance costs are going through the roof. I'd like to see the $50,000, but I'd like to see it in the operating. I don't want to mess.
50,000 operating, you're 50,000 operating, 50,000 operating. Capital, two capitals, it doesn't matter what I think, because I think we've got 4 people who want $50,000 in the operating budget.
25 in the operating.
Those 4 guys wanted 50.
Well,
They weren't presented with 25.
You're all on 50?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, like, we can have a conversation. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
I don't want anything that goes 4-3, right? So if it can't go to 50 this year, I just wanted to put the bug in that, look, if we go a little bit more, then all of a sudden the capital budget gets a little bit more of a funding mechanism, as per what Jessica's saying.
Right. And operating budgets affect taxes, capital budgets don't.
That's true.
Right.
But it also sets precedent of going forward, and we know that paving will go up going forward. So that's my point.
Can we ask Jessica what she would recommend for an amount? I mean, not to put you.
Well, she recommended taking 25.
No, but she recommended it for a different purpose, and now we're saying what we want to do is we want to close the gap from where we were when we were fully funded, and how many years do you think that realistically should take us? Because that'll determine the amount that we do each year between now and then.
Yeah, so, I mean, I initially proposed the 25,000 thinking, it would take 4 years to kind of get to, an adequate level that would then need to be discussed of where it needed to be. But annually, I would talk to Earl and be like, what do we really need for paving? What are you seeing for costs? Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've seen, as he indicated earlier, a significant jump in that. Shooting from the hip, I don't know that I have a great number to give you of what that should be. I am not opposed to 50,000 going back in. I'm not opposed to the 25,000 going back in. It won't hurt me if the 25,000 doesn't go in, but I am in full agreement with Earl that you will have long-term impacts if that maintains the mentality.
So I guess I'd be comfortable having a recommendation for the next meeting as to what that number is, because we're just shooting from the hip up here, and that's not the way you run things. I mean, we're just guessing at a number, and I'd rather say, okay, Jessica and Earl have talked, and this is.
If you're looking for that level of a number, what I can tell you is last year had $100,000 that I added into it. Council last year pulled it out and funded that out of ARPA. So if I had to give you a number, I would say $100,000 is ultimately where I want, an increase of $100,000 is ultimately where I want paving to be.
So how many years should we take to do that? Because if we do 3, it's 33, and that's right between.
Are you saying 100,000 each year?
No, I'm saying we needed to immediately get 100,000 back in. Last year, we were at 250. I put 100,000 in to bring us to 350. Too much of a big hit for the budget, so we pulled it out of ARPA because we had that availability, knowing that we would have to put it in. I initially had 100,000 to go in this year, but at what was a 30% increase before I brought it down to 17 for you, that was not feasible. And I talked with Earl and said, look, I can't put 100,000 in. We can have the discussions with council to see whether there's some level that is amenable, and we ultimately, I'll say agree. He kind of felt probably pressured by me to, to maintain the 25 because I was trying to compromise, knowing that I would not be doing my diligence if I came at 100,000 no matter what. But if you're asking me what I would put into this, I'd be putting 100,000 in today.
So if we did 50 this year, 50 next year, that gives us, we're behind half, roughly. But I think that's a huge step forward because we were really in the hole and we brought it up 100. So I think this would be a good precedent to look at 50 this year and hopefully 50 next.
Is on board with $50,000? As a starting point, we can change it, but I'm just looking to have some sort of a final budget package we can at least come into the meeting with. Okay, $50,000 paving. I don't think we ever dealt with the dugouts.
We did that.
We kind of took it out.
I have that out of capital plan.
Okay, sorry, my mistake.
We haven't dealt with the 100,000 for the scholarship.
We have not dealt with that.
And I don't support that, I think, at this point.
Others? Different amounts?
I'd like to know what the plan, I think they've both left, but I'd like to know what the plan is to raise the additional $1 million, because I'd be open to a situation where it's like you raise X amount, you unlock a certain piece. But I don't know if they're aggressively thinking they're going to raise $1 million in the next 2 years, or if it's a 10-year plan. And that makes a big difference between the ask. And the ask may have been, okay, great, we've got 100,000 from the town and we can leverage that to other donors. I just don't know where we fit into the puzzle on this one. But I think it's of incredible importance to our town, and I just want to see, I'd like to see a plan of sort of how we fit in and what we can realistically do. So that doesn't give much of an answer, but I mean, I can't say yes to $100,000 right now.
I'd be supportive of a smaller amount, more in line with what we give to other nonprofits, $2,500, $5,000, that kind of a thing. That's my opinion. I love the idea, I love the concept. I'm not convinced we should put $100,000 of town money into it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I know personally the 2 kids who got the awards. They're amazing kids. They represent us in ways that we'd all be proud. And I know that other towns support their scholarship funds to a much greater degree than we support this one. But I've heard some pretty creative ideas tonight that I think are worth positing to this group. The consolidation of scholarships, they're usually one time, which is what makes this scholarship different. It's a 4-year scholarship, but maybe if they could work out a memo of understanding with the various one-time groups, they could get a nice chunk. I think Matt's idea that it be part of a fundraising program that's going to raise the $1 million as opposed to a one-off, which we don't know how that goes. That's a great idea. We asked earlier the question about the other communities, which we didn't ask about tonight, I think out of kindness, but I think that those communities ought to be part of that discussion. Those kids come from all those communities. So I think we've got a chance to really support them by saying, we're open, without saying what the number is or anything at this point, and without making a commitment this year budget to say we want to continue a conversation with you where we provide you with the kinds of support that would allow you to get to the $1 million with our help.
If we don't come up with a number tonight, then it's not in the budget for this year.
I understand. Well, then I would agree to put in a smaller number to show good faith and the value that we hold in the scholarship idea. But I wouldn't just say we ignore your $1 million goal. I would say, look, we think we can help you get there.
So consensus on a number?
So I'd say $20,000 is what I would say. You said 2.
I said 2,500, yeah.
I know, I heard. I was listening.
Here we are again. It's death by 1,000 cuts, right?
I agree.
It's only 20. It's only a half a cent here, and it's only a half a cent there.
And we only say that when it's a project that we aren't 100% invested in somehow.
Councilor Daniele?
I think this isn't necessarily time sensitive. I think that we could choose to use ARPA funds during the middle of the year, for instance, if we really wanted to. Or we could have this conversation and kind of bring them along the way to next year's operating budget to, what are we going to do long-term going forward? So I don't think that this has to come in tonight, personally. If you guys want to do a small number, I think 20,000 might be a little heavy. I think I would be proponent of let's push it off and let's have a conversation with them. Let's figure out what we want to do versus what the school system wants to do versus what individual donors are going to do. But be a part of the conversation.
I'm fine with that. So kind of kick the can a little bit and say, yes, we want to help. We're not quite ready to put a number on it yet, but let's keep talking.
Particularly since it's an operating budget request.
Right.
It's just really hard to entertain those.
Yep. The only thing I had written down that we haven't talked about is transportation.
I also put down the Grange and Port Teen Center.
Okay.
Are both
Right,
on.
they didn't come tonight, but they've asked.
No, but it's in there.
Grange.
Just a
and
quick
Port.
conversation would be good.
Yep. Do you have the numbers handy? I could look them up, but.
Grange Hall was asking for 13,000, Port Teen Center, 8,600.
Okay.
I could say the same thing about that if you want me to kick it off.
Sure.
We could choose to fund those things out of ARPA dollars, which means we do not have to decide tonight. I think that we haven't heard from them specifically as much. We have a one-page document explaining what they might have needed, but I think a conversation would really go a long way as to what's going on. Tell me more than I've learned on this piece of paper, would be my.
And then it would come out of ARPA. If we didn't do
Potentially,
it
yeah.
tonight. Well, if we don't do it tonight, yeah, or wait a year, yeah. Yeah.
We fund out of ARPA, we fund out of our operating budget, they're going to be here next year asking for the same amount, so we're setting ourselves up for more expenditures, so, again, new programs, they're great, I go to the Grange, up to the Grange and have great bean suppers and stuff, but, I think that, the request, has come from the Grange because they've seen that we're supporting a lot of things, and, well, that's right or wrong, I don't know, but,
I believe it was for capital improvements to their building, though, right? It was something like that? It was, or landscaping?
Yeah, to the grounds, I believe, the grounds and/or building was the primary amount of the request.
I think they had some big pine trees that are a hazard they need to take down, which were very expensive, so.
It could be, I think it referenced grounds and building maintenance is how I'll categorize it.
Yeah, $10,000 grant for one-time assistance for grounds, including tree and brush removal, $3,000 for our top sponsor level support for programming. And then, that's their total budget, which would be, of their total budget is $13,705 last year. So anybody want to add in Grange or Port Teen Center?
Grant, do we remove trees? No?
If they're a town tree.
If it's on town property,
Okay,
yeah.
well, Is this something we
They're
could
an
do?
interesting property though, right, in terms of nonprofit and how,
It's not, that hasn't been our practice. We typically only do it on our property. I'd suggest we don't start now. Hearing you guys talk, though, you're not going to like this idea because it's another meeting, but I think years ago, you used to have the board and committee, or, sorry, the outside agencies requests come in for like a workshop, kind of when you're meeting with all boards and committees. I kind of put that out there just as a suggestion to file in your brain next year before we get to hearing. If you have them all come in for casual workshop, they can kind of walk you through these things, which sounds like it might be helpful, because I think you're going to see them come in again next year and probably have more.
Not seeing a ton of support for moving out of those forward. So do you want to go to transportation? And unless, Darrell, you want to talk about Granger Port Teen Center?
Well, I was just looking in the budget under the tree thing, and there's some funds in there that haven't been allocated, so maybe if they're a hazard and it's going to fall in our roadway, we may be able to fund it out of that or something. That might be something, a discussion, 'cause those trees are huge. They're right on the edge of Elm Street, and who knows, but.
We have a tree task force that's eagerly seeking money for projects as well, a municipal tree task force.
That would be for trees on public land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot of tree
Yeah,
maintenance. so-
yeah. All right, transportation, Ed, do you want to, I mean, you made your pitch, and anything else you want to add, or anybody else have
Just simple,
questions?
We have the money in the budget. It can't be used by the end of this fiscal year because of the timing. They're currently looking for the consultant. They have a person in mind. They want to know they have the $10,000 to spend on it before they negotiate with that person. I said I would present the transfer idea to the council, knowing that they hadn't spent money that they'd already been allocated and appropriated.
Do we have budget money in this year's budget?
No.
23.
No?
No, it was mentioned that $10,000 could be given out of FY '23, but there is no current appropriation or budget for transportation funds.
It was more, can we find it somewhere? If we need
It was, if you need 10,000, we would rather see it come out of FY '23 and be basically an over expenditure of something. I had not delved into where it would actually come from because I didn't have the request before me yet.
Regardless, I'll give you my, whether it's in this year or not, the question is, do we want to put it in next year? We've had this discussion, but my conversations with Russ and my conversations with Greg Jordan when he came to talk to us about Metro, and we asked them both, what do you think, should we do this? And Metro said, we kind of looked at it, we didn't really think there was a need as a public transit service. So he said it was better served by doing point-to-point van, RTP kind of stuff, if you really want to do it, which is, I think, what they're doing in Falmouth. And Russ brought up the point that it's often going to require lots of public subsidy. If you want to have a transportation service that's ongoing, it tends to run in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of money that needs to be contributed to it beyond whatever you collect in fares. And then what I've learned over the last few weeks is that in order for it to be successful, it's probably not going to be just a bus, but rather an experience that is tied to come to Freeport and have this unique experience by traveling on this thing that brings you to unique places in a unique way. And it sounds to me more like a private enterprise kind of a thing. So it's tough for me to get behind it. And if it's tough for me to get behind the ultimate end goal, then wouldn't really support saying, let's get a consultant to study something that I don't think I would vote for to fund in the end.
My only response to that, Dan, is, there are people, Mary Davis, Tawny, Kathy Smith, myself, and then more recently a group of more like 10 or 15 people who disagree with you and who think that, without knowing exactly what it should be, that the town would benefit from a municipal transportation system that connected the train to the hotels, which connected the places along Main Street for older people, for disabled people, it would give Freeport a reputation for caring and concerning about moving people along. And then, beyond that, the circle of assets that exist around the town, everything from the farm to the desert of Maine to the Winslow Park to the marinas to the Pettingill Farm, and everyone in that circle has said that they would benefit, including the beer companies, has said that they would benefit from it, and they would participate in the development of if the ultimate project seemed to benefit them. But nobody knows exactly what it should be. So you've got a lot of people who, feel a little differently about it than you do, are asking for $10,000, which apparently they had last year without knowing exactly which bucket it was coming out of, that they had the commitment. If we didn't, then I've misrepresented the town's position to them for over a year, since I fought hard for that $10,000 last year. And so now all I'm saying is, give them the $10,000 to figure it out. You can always say to them at the end of the $10,000, you don't like the idea and you're not going to fund anymore. That's sort of like my idea on the Mallet Drive Boulevard. I can't see spending $50,000 to come up with a $10 million plan I'm not going to support ever. I get it. I mean, that's not irrational. But there are there are responsible people who would benefit from this, who have said, we'd like to pursue it, and they're waiting to hear whether they have the money to hire the consultant. So I'm asking, please give them the $10,000.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I'm not saying Freeport wouldn't benefit from it. I never said that. I'm just saying that the expenses.
Well, you don't know that yet. It could be something really small.
I think Freeport would benefit from it.
But you don't know what it is that it's going to cost you all this money. That's the purpose of the study. They may come out of it and say, look, this doesn't work at all for all the reasons you said. And your $10,000 has saved you a lot. Anyway, that's the pitch.
Yep. Others? Darrell?
I think it's in the budget. We had the discussion earlier about having a pool of money to hire people to write grants. Have we addressed that, and is it appropriate?
Regarding transportation now, or?
Any grant proposal that comes up. We've had this discussion all along, so the numbers are flying around. I just want to make sure before we adopt it next week, we do have an adequate pool of money to hire people to write grants for us. And I don't know where that would,
There's no position in the budget solely for grant writing.
So that's something we probably ought to discuss.
Can we do transportation first?
Okay, yep.
And then, but yes, that's a good point. I want to come back to that. Thoughts on transportation in or out? Anybody else in favor? Please.
So I think, if it was in the budget, or we said we were going to try and do it last year, I remember the discussion somewhat, right? Like, we talked about it. I think it's an interesting idea. So I guess I would be a proponent of trying to figure it out and, maybe trying to get it in somehow.
$10,000. Councilor Fournier.
This is for Jessica. Does it have to be a specific line item, or is this one of the items that we have come up periodically throughout the year that say in September they want to hire a consultant? It could be funded out of, either not reserves, but
Operating budget.
or something else. Sometimes we have.
I think that's how it came about last year. I think Peter said,
Yeah, I think Peter's intention was that it would just come out of like a contingency amount, but, yeah.
So is that something that if tonight we don't adopt it in the operating budget, but if Ed comes back in June or whatever, says we need out of the contingency, that could happen?
I mean, contingency is for the unexpected happenings that may come up that we're not aware of. I don't want to say yes or no, because ultimately what I would do is just mentally say, if you want 10,000 out of contingency, then that leaves me only 10,000 of contingency for the year. But at the same time, you're aware of this. It's an potential expected expense. It would.
How about ARPA?
ARPA is an appropriate use of this fund.
Would you be comfortable with that?
I don't care where the money comes from.
And it don't affect the operating budget?
It's fine with me. I mean, they're just, the only thing I'm concerned about is, they expected the 10,000 to be available. The timing pushed it to the end of the fiscal year, so they didn't spend it. And now they're in the conversation with a group of people about finding a consultant, and those consultant ideas are floating. So if they don't have the money, they can't talk to those people. They shouldn't. If we're willing to fund it through ARPA, that's fine. It's a one-time thing. It will lead to a yes or a no, or a design. ARPA'd be great.
There's
motion.
Others, and we got three folks who kind of. Chip, Matt, John, yes or no? Comments?
You go
We got three supporters so far. That's why I'm kind of pushing it to know if we have. You would go ARPA? Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You got 4. Anybody else want to weigh in? You can leave it at 4. You were already waiting. You're one of the 4. Can't count twice. All right. So 10,000 ARPA transportation. Is there anything else that we missed?
So what about the chargers? Are you going to direct?
Oh, yeah. I'll kind of throw out what my understanding is, and then you guys can correct me or change it if you want. Right now, there's a $100,000 capital item for level 2 chargers, or the ones that we're going to pay for, that we're going to put probably in town hall. When we put it in, we had the same discussion we had earlier about, we don't think we're ever going to spend $100,000 of town money. We think it's going to be mostly grant funded. But because we're going to spend it, we have to put it in and then get reimbursed for the grants later. But my recollection was we never intended to spend $100,000 worth of town money. And at the time, we were thinking we'd put them in 3 sites, the town hall, maybe the library, and maybe the train station, I think was the third one. But we had a few sites. We since learned that, A, 2 of those 3 sites are challenging, but town hall is a little easier. And B, when we put the RFP out, Adam put it out, and we only got 1 response from a firm in Texas that kind of went dark after he reached back out to them. So there wasn't a lot of clamor for people to actually do the work. So Adam has cobbled together a way to get it done using some contractors and some town staff, which still requires some money that we can still get grant money for. If we might get grant money for. Total cost of the project was closer to $20,000 for 1 site at town hall, using part-town staff, and we'd have to contract out the electrical work and things like that. Do you want to add to that, Adam, or did I get that mostly right?
You're mostly right.
Okay.
I'm like an arrow in a target. Maybe I'm a little too precise, but.
Okay. And so I think the reason I bring it up is if that's the case, and that's what we're doing, we don't need $100,000 in the capital budget. We can reduce that to $80,000, $70,000. Sorry, we can reduce it to $30,000, $20,000 or $30,000 is all we would need in there. It doesn't affect the tax levy. It doesn't affect their operating budget. So it's more just an accounting thing to say this is what we really think we're going to spend out of capital.
I just want to clarify, too, that I did a little bit of research on the Efficiency Main grant, and there's no prohibition or requirement in the grant documents that these are very likely to be funded with, that the municipality has to pay for the electricity, which was a key component of my support. And the only way I would support it is if there is a point-of-sale opportunity at the charger that the town is not providing free electricity. And that's perfectly allowable in the grant, which is something that I think eventually, if we can find a responsive vendor, we'd want to put in that proposal.
Do we know what that would potentially add to the cost? Because I don't think we've accommodated for that.
Just a quick scan, I found 4 devices, less than $2,500 each, that allow for networked charging, is what it's called, and you can add a point-of-sale component to that charger device. So, not very expensive.
Adam, to.
Yeah, if you want to, if there's a number, Adam, that you're targeting, that would be helpful too, just so we can adjust appropriately.
Sorry.
So, Dan, you captured that well. The grant requires cost proposals to accompany the application. I sent out RFPs to all the qualified contractors within a 25-mile radius of 04032, listed on the Efficiency Main website. And we also posted it to social media on the town's website. I emailed it out. And that was for a level 2 charger, furbish, install, own, operate. We got essentially 0 responses. Again, my point is there's a very finite number of grants available that will be distributed to about, 25 grants between Cumberland and York County. We don't have those cost proposals to go with the grant application. It's not for lack of trying. My other strategy was, let's see if we can get a grant for the electrical work, okay? We'll figure out how to do the site work, maybe through internally or what have you. Phone calls, emails to electrical contractors within 25-mile radius. I got many, or actually in all non-responses, or no's, if you will. So my point is the likelihood of a grant is not going to happen. I just want to set expectations, that's all. That's primarily my point. But it's not for lack of trying. If, Caroline, if you could make sure I'm saying this right, I think Dan, I think you said this too, we've sort of taken the train station off of the list, the library off the list. Now we're focusing on town hall, and which, again, my personal experience, conversations with electrical contractors, for that electrical work, we should budget $20,000 to $30,000 for town hall. Number could come in a little lower, but we'll deal with that once we figure out exactly where the power is being supplied from, which we hope is from the utility pole right off of Main Street.
Is it 20,000 just for electrical or all in?
All in, 20 to 30,
Site,
a range,
device.
all in, because there's site work, there's this and that. The chargers themselves aren't that expensive.
Right.
But it's the electrical and the site work that the numbers really add up.
So I guess now I hear John saying there could be additional costs on top of that for the point of sale. We don't know if we would need somebody to administer that or oversee that for
No.
the town, for the device.
I don't think that was the cost of the device, right, that you were looking at. I assume that whoever operates it takes their little percentage of whatever they charge, and we don't have to
Well, it'd be the
pay them
credit
to.
card.
Is that way?
Or
Yeah.
I mean, it's a point of sale. so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
whatever.
you can, we can either assume that and take the revenue and offset the cost of electricity with the revenue, or we can hire a vendor to do that.
Well, that's what I was saying, if there's I don't know, Jessica, if that's something that we could even handle here. So if we had to hire a vendor, we might want to do a little more. But one thing I think I want to clarify, when you guys have talked about this, you always said get grants. We now hear Adam saying,
No grants.
this
Right.
isn't likely,
Right.
so if we don't get a grant,
Yeah.
is the council still supportive of covering the full expense?
Which is the 20,000 or
20
something?
to 30?
20 to 30, we think.
Yeah, go ahead, Chip.
We're cobbling this together, and we've got a lot of other projects going on. I don't think right now this is the time to do this.
Others?
I was sold on going for a grant with no cost and charging it now. Yeah, we got too much other stuff going on. I think it needs to be postponed. So, take it out of the budget.
Yeah, John?
Question for Adam. Do you think other municipalities who might also be in competition for the Efficiency Main Trust grant money might also face the same lack of response that we're finding, and therefore maybe the grant money doesn't get expended?
Yes, John. I know, because I watched the grant webinar, that the schedules are, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, they're unrealistic. Because the RFP was put out in March. They're due June 30. They have to be installed by December 31. And they just don't work. So I'm surmising they will extend those deadlines. I don't know that. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it does. I guess that gives me a lot more confidence to support holding off until we can find a contractor who can put it in and get us a proposal so that we can apply for the grant money. I mean, that was my whole basis for support, was we were leveraging 90% Efficiency Main grant money for the chargers.
One finer point, sorry to derail your momentum, John, is the grant is up to $8,000.
Up to $8,000
Yeah.
per charger.
It's not 90% of 20 to 30, it's up to 8,000.
But was that for per installation or per unit?
I believe it's per site.
Site.
Yeah,
For your town hall project,
being one site.
Phase 1 is the lawn in front and the ramps and the entranceways. Phase 2 is the parking lot?
Yes.
And Phase 2 is not scheduled for this summer?
No. No.
Yeah. So I mean, based on all that, I could see taking the 100,000 out of the
Yeah,
capital
I
budget
agree.
entirely, and then if we have an opportunity, we can always talk about how to get it back in. Jake?
Should we take it out if this might get extended? We might need that money come summer of next year to get the grant, right? Sort of a thing?
Or
Because-
sooner.
Do you see what I'm saying, though? So
Yeah.
like, maybe we don't pursue this project, we just let that money sit there, because it's gonna sit in the capital budget anyway. But we leave it there in case the grant opportunity comes back. So rather than take it out and just make the accounting different, yeah, we probably won't spend it, but it's available and we have to do it.
Maybe move it to FY '25? Well, I know we already approved the program, right? So no point in moving it.
Like, is there a reason to say we're gonna take it out? It's just available if we needed it.
I'm uncomfortable with the amount of 100,000. I'd go for something less, but the whole conversation initially was, really, we weren't going to have a lot out of the pocket. Now, it's creeping up on us, so.
Well, no, I think we're all saying the same thing, that we don't wanna spend any
I think we ought to
dollars.
save something for a placeholder, so we can apply.
What if we leave 25 in there as a place?
As a placeholder, but say that it should be mostly grant funded.
Yeah.
Yep. Is there, I assume there's a mechanism for us to do that. I don't know if I should be looking at Jessica or Caroline, but if we say there's $25,000 that we're putting into the budget, but we don't want you to spend $25,000 unless we get grants for it.
I think you talked about this a couple meetings ago.
Yeah, we've done that. Yeah,
But it's a capital budget item, so it doesn't affect the taxes.
correct.
Okay.
Right, so we can leave, so does that sound like an appropriate thing? Leave 25,000 in? Okay. Okay. Is there anything else that we're forgetting? I think we have a budget.
$50,000 for the,
three.
the ballot drive study.
Oh, yeah, if you want to make a pitch for, do you want to remove?
The pitch, I don't want to
Okay.
make it.
Is there anybody else who supports taking $50,000 for mallet drive study out of the budget? I don't see a lot of support for that.
Back to an
Well spoken.
amount to hire grant writers.
Yes, grant writers. So, yeah, it
we
sounds like
just-
we didn't have enough for a full-time person, but that we wanted to support part-time.
Just cut $75,000 out of the chargers,
Capital.
and that get moved over somehow into an account that we can hire people out of or something, or we need some,
Well, the comment that was, excuse me.
I don't know what the amount is, but we need some sort of funding so we can hire some people. Not full-time, just specific grants.
Mr. Michaud was here today, and, we said to him, we'll consider, and we've had precedent for funding a grant writer if you need one, at your point, piece by piece. So do we need to put money in now, or do we can we wait until those proposals come forward and then make the judgment? Because we have ARPA funds, we have destination TIF funds. I'm asking, we have some flexibility without putting it in the operating budget and kicking up the tax rate.
We only have
Well,
100,000 of ARPA funds left at this
Yeah.
point, if my calculations
Yeah.
are correct, so. Spend it. Well, I'm just saying, it is going down fast.
And we do have, there's a $40,000 fund for downtown-related projects that we could use for that as well.
And you have, I think, although I'm never sure about this anymore, you have some amount of money in the sewer.
60.
That isn't sewer designated, it's qualified project designated, just like your 40 is. Or if it's not, I don't think it's 60 anymore, it's less.
I thought it was.
I thought it was 60.
Yeah.
Is it 60? Okay. For a total of 100.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's places we could go for the money there, yeah. Because I'm guessing that the consultants to hire, that they would need to hire for these grants are not $100,000, but more like $5,000 or $10,000.
I just hope we don't lose the momentum of it.
Yeah.
We've got some awesome grants already, and we need to continue that.
I'll just give some caution. I'm a little bit concerned about just saying we have a funding to do grants because there's so many grants for everything out there right now. And who's going to pick and choose what the priority is
The guy
that
you
we
hire.
want to be using that money out of?
That's why you need the guy, the person. And that's why the sewer needed a person.
Come in, we'll want to use you for a grant maybe if you find one that's worth it.
I'm sorry?
We want to hire you to find a grant to apply for on our behalf, not necessarily that we want to go to them and say, we want you to apply for this grant, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you go to a person and say, this is the project or the area of development that we're interested in. What grants are there? What are the matches? What are the costs? And then the guy comes up with a plan, and the group comes back and says to the council, this is worth doing or not. Council decides whether to apply for it, knowing there's a match and knowing that that might not be something they want to do.
Jake?
That wasn't my interpretation. My thought was we've got all these committees that are coming up and being like, we would have gone for this specific grant if we had the capacity. So my thought for these dollars was we would go and we'd say, we want to apply for this grant. Hey, consultant, make this happen.
Well, that's fair. I didn't thought of it that way. That wasn't the sewer approach.
And I think
But I guess that's a conversation we could have not tonight, too.
Yeah, it sounds like that, if they want to come to us and say, we would like $10,000 to hire a consultant to help us write a grant, then they would come to the council and we would say, yeah, we think we can designate this fund or that fund, and yes, we think it's, because part of the issue is we didn't want everyone running out and applying for grants, and then they get the grants and they say, oh, by the way, there's $1 million match.
Right.
We wanted them to come to us before they go out for the grant, so they know that there's some support if they get the grant for us to match it.
And that's what Complete Streets is doing. They're looking them
They're
up
kind of giving
and
us a
seeing
heads up,
what
and
we
they'll
can
probably
do.
come back and say, yeah, we need this amount for a consultant. All right, did you have more budget stuff you want us to deal with? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have 3 other items on this that one, I would like to just kind of blow through all these items to make sure I have written down correctly what council's wishes are for each one of them. But before I do that, I have 3 on my list that I'm not sure I've heard any resolution on. I know we've had a discussion by department heads on it, but I haven't had council pipe up one way or the other that I recall. So I'm asking for what the feedback may be. And that is, and I would be remorse with all the discussion that's gone on tonight not to advocate on behalf of my fellow department heads, of the library is looking for a part-time staff person for $16,500 that she indicated, your director indicated a direct service level impact of not having that position. There's also $60,000 that was requested for the cleaning service at the library to assist the buildings and grounds with their true work focus. And then there was also from fire rescue a medic position of $95,700. So I just want to throw those out there because I know they were listed. I'm not recalling resolution on any discussion one way or other of how council felt on them.
Yeah, my recollection, you guys can check me on it, is we had that list of 10 and we invited them to come up and speak, and we picked 2 or 3 to add in. We didn't act on the others. I assumed that was because we didn't have enough support to act on the others.
Okay. I just wasn't willing to assume.
Right to ask the question to get an affirmative response. Yeah.
Not adding those things.
Correct.
So I have no inclusion for the medic position, the library cleaning, part-time staff at the library, Grange Hall support, Port Teen Center support. None of those I am doing anything different with. I have Meeting House Arts, Farmers Market, and Transportation Study coming out of ARPA, and I have a no on the scholarship amount that came forth tonight. I think that's all of it.
Soften the no on the scholarship
To a maybe. Larger conversation. I'm talking more of like numbers I put in, but yes, you're correct. It's a no into this budget, but pending future discussion.
And reduction of 100,000 to 25,000 for EV chargers and 50,000
For the capital, 26,750 for the dugouts into the capital.
Yeah, and paving too, right?
And paving to 50.
Yeah, okay. That matches my list.
Okay, perfect.
Don't go away, counselors. We have more to do. We have one more thing. And so we do need a motion to table the budget item to vote on till June 20th. So, Ed, can you read that be it ordered? Or John, can you read this be it ordered?
Be it ordered that item number 112-23 be tabled until June 20, 2023.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Bradley. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? So we're voting on the budget on June 20th. Thank you, Jessica, and everybody else who stuck around for that fascinating discussion. We do have one last item, which I'm going to let Caroline explain.
Sure.
Talk.
So every so often, Chris researched it, appears maybe we haven't done this in like 10 years. The police department gets some money from Cumberland County, and this is funds from criminal court cases that originated from Freeport. So when the cases go to court and there's undesignated seized funds, they give them back to the municipality. We have a fund we've historically put these in, and then the police department often uses it for training or purchasing equipment in accordance with the purchasing policy that we have in place. You do this a little bit differently. Sometimes we get state funds for random things like this, and we incorporate that in the budget. Because this was specifically from the county, it was kind of separate, so it's on here for an action item to accept the funds from Cumberland County and deposit them into the police department forfeiture account.
How much is it?
$12,742. We won't, but police has some ideas for some equipment and training that they would like.
My only question to Caroline on this, which I'll share with you guys, is that if these are funds coming out of cases that originated in Freeport, it could be perceived as creating this odd dynamic where we're pursuing a case, and if we win the case, we're going to get the money back and we can spend it on police stuff, which is a little odd. So
Is that what they do in Georgia?
We couldn't see you did it for have accepted them in 10 years, so I'm not going to lose sleep on this. I lose sleep on a lot of other things.
We can accept it
but
and put it into some other fund, right?
We just have a police forfeiture account, which is what you've always put them in for funds. Jessica left the room, but I'm sure if we wanted it put into a separate account, we could do that as well.
Yeah, I think any discussion about what we do with it can happen subsequent, so there isn't this tied, like, next week, we're buying $12,742 worth.
Yeah, this is
of,
just
whatever.
accepting of the funds.
So you guys okay on that? So, Matt, do you want to read this last bit ordered?
Sure. Be it ordered that $12,742 in asset forfeiture funds be accepted.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lawrence. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I think that was everybody, 7-0, and that concludes our meeting for tonight. So we are adjourned.
Recording stopped.
You can have one on your own.
Oh, my. That hurt. Is that yours?
No. Yeah. You got through a bunch of stuff. What is it?
That's the consent agenda, the budget,